snickerdoodle recipe, so I can set it back home.
think
but I
we're
can make
good.
Cookies, so I have cookies when I get home. That's the most important thing in the universe, to make sure I have cookies when I get home tonight.
Especially snickerdoodles, they need
Yes.
to be soft.
They do.
I think we're good to go. We're on the screen now, so
Ready?
ready.
I will call the meeting to order. This is Monday, June 23rd. This is the meeting of the Berlin Select Board, open meeting. Let you know that these meetings are public, that you are not a subject. If you're here and say things, you'll be recorded as we are on cable access for our presentations. We'll start with the approval of the minutes. I believe they're minutes from June. I've already fixed it. Second. Maybe be able to do that now. Is there any comments about the minutes? Is
Nay,
there a motion?
Motion to approve?
and seconded?
All in favor? Aye. Is there any comments, general comments that someone in the audience would like to make? So just let yourself be known. And then as we, I don't see any, if you change your mind a little bit, let us know. We can do our first hearing, which is for the common vicular license for Playa Bowls at Highland Commons. If you want to come forward.
Good evening, Warren.
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, the address of the business and just a few things about it, and we'll see if there's other questions.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Dennis Sosa. I reside in Millbury, Massachusetts. The Playa Bowls location is here in Berlin at 48 Highland Commons East, Suite 300. It's a acai bowl and smoothie shop. It's all fresh fruit. We have about 25 employees for this shop. Which is very exciting. One of the main drivers for us to put this location here is about 18 months ago, I opened the Humble Cookies up at the shopping center as well.
Oh, nice.
And when looking for another location for this franchise, I want to be close to that location as well. So it's been very successful for us so far.
And this one's going to be in Berlin because the other one is across the line, even though it's one mall in
Yes, right across
Hudson.
the property.
Yeah. Do you have a sense about when you're looking to open?
You know,
Oh, you're open now? Oh, they are open now. We're just getting the licenses. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought that don't worry. Are there questions up here?
No.
No.
No, I
And
see a
then-
steady stream of folks every time I'm up there. Oops, sorry.
Good. And then we have nothing, no comments or problems with
No,
inspections.
because they opened before they submitted an application for a license. They'd already gone through all the inspections, have all the permits, and there's no
Great.
negative feedback.
Great. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
And I will gladly second.
All in favor? Aye.
Hey,
See, we made it easy.
easy peasy.
There you go. Thank you very much. We did time certains on some of these, didn't we?
Just speak slowly.
Well, no, it's actually already after 5 after. We can go to the next one. So why don't you come forward for Fiesta shows? I assume you're John Flynn?
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Flynn, the Executive Vice President of doing business as Fiesta Shows. Here before you tonight to request another event, hopefully without rain, at the mall.
I think you're looking at July 17th to July 20th, right?
Correct, sir.
Give you just at least a little plug so people know it's. And you did shows last year? Here?
No, not at Solomon Pond. This was our first in, I think, 8 or 9 years that we since we've been back to Solomon Pond.
Okay.
Just did one in the spring.
Correct. Oh, the
Just
one
went this
in the spring, right. And that when we started these several years ago, we worked out all the issues with neighbors and sound, and if neighbors have issues, they know who to call, and our police department's not saying people to Marlboro and Marlboro to us.
No, we actually have a group too of residents, excuse me, who we notified that have had concerns in the past, and they've asked to be notified when we have items like this on the agenda. We did reach out to them and let them know about the meeting tonight and that they were welcome to attend if they had any questions or concerns, or submit them in writing. And we did not, I don't believe, receive any in writing.
No. No, because I think as a whole, we have, I think, had much better success for the last couple of years.
We had reached out to the neighbors. We actually had a couple of them come over and visit us while we were open. And then it was a nice part, they came back with their kids and had a good time. To the best of my knowledge, the police were fine with everything, fire department. I wasn't aware of any other concerns other than obviously we didn't have food at the event, which was really strange for us. But hopefully Bridget will be able to work all of that out and we can go on with the food for this event.
Good.
Because I know that there was a noise concern before with the, just because of where you are. It just goes across the field and they had asked for things to either be put in place or toned down for that. So I'm assuming that that will all be taken care of.
Correct. What we actually did was we shut off all the sound at 8 o'clock, except for certain sound that had to be on for safety reasons. And the neighbors that came over didn't have any complaints with that whatsoever. So we're gonna use the same format that we used the last time we were there.
Now, how late do you go?
I'd like to go to like 1 o'clock in the morning, but no. But I believe last year we had permission to go to 11, but we were always closed before 10. Rain might have helped us a little bit with that.
Well, again, hopefully no rain this time.
Yeah.
There are other questions?
And also naturally, upon your approval of this, the state is notified to do their state inspections of all the equipment, along with the building department in town, electrical department. Police and fire are all applied for and details are set up with them.
Great. Ready for a motion?
Motion to approve?
I'll approve it and then I have a question.
Okay.
And maybe this was because of the last application. If you scroll down to the end, it has Police Chief Galvin. So I don't know if that's relevant to be changed because that email
Yeah.
doesn't work anymore.
How about motion to approve with the change to the application to
The
Chief
correct-
Shartner?
Yeah.
All right, seconded, thank you.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye. Thank you very much. We look
Thank you.
forward to it.
best of luck.
You're more than welcome to come out and get a free ride on the zipper.
Oh,
Thank you very much. Good seeing you again.
you too, have a great night.
I didn't like rides like that.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Scott, would you like me to do my town administrator report, which I can get done by 6:15?
Well, you could at least start, yeah, if we can't get done by 6:15. Well, so we're gonna jump to the town administrator report because the next hearing is time certain at 6:15, which is 5 minutes from now.
All right, so first item under my town administrator report is 4th of July, which is rapidly approaching as in next week. So it does fall on a Friday. We are closed. Did ask, and traditionally in the past, we have then closed therefore the day before as the holiday itself. So my recommendation is that we would close on the Thursday rather than the Monday, because I think everybody will be back to business, and so it doesn't make sense to close on the Monday.
I don't think it's next week. Is it really next week?
2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks?
Is it-
I'm sorry. I
Is
thought it
it
was
sweet?
next week.
And there's no-
I have things I
It's-
have done
it's
by
next week.
July 4th, so.
I was, you had like a panicked look.
I do. I have 2 weeks to get things done and anyway. Okay, somehow I was thinking that when we went to the 4-day week, that when holidays fell on a Friday, they
Fell on a
they
Friday.
fell on a Friday and you don't.
We
Yeah,
still have to
that's-
give people the pay for the holidays
Good.
or give a close for a day, so. Doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often. It hasn't. I think this is actually the first one we've encountered since we went last summer to the schedule without Fridays last June.
I agree. I think closing on Thursday is less problematic than closing on the Monday that we're planning to have a select board meeting.
I would think so. And we will advertise it and put up signs so
Yeah.
folks are aware.
This includes the transfer station?
The
Mhm.
Are they open on
they're
Thursday?
not.
Yes, they are.
But
They're
on
open
Thursdays,
late.
but not never Fridays.
Right.
So I don't
Okay.
make the decisions for the transfer station because that falls under Board of Health.
Okay, because they were also
So-
open on Thursday of this week, which was a state holiday.
I will reach out to the chair and just mention there's one benefited employee at the transfer station. So the other thing that could be done is to give like a floating holiday or holiday comp time. So I will make mention of that to the Board of Health chair. Pleased to report, as I emailed the board about, that we have been awarded the Mass DOT Small Bridge Grant in the amount of $500,000 to partially fund the replacement of the South Street Bridge. As I mentioned at a prior meeting, we've also submitted a Community One-Stop grant for the remaining funding needed to complete the project, which is now estimated at just over 1.3 million. And awards would be announced this fall. So this is a great first step in that process. And we literally are expecting the design approval any day now. It has taken a protracted amount of time, but we have answered all of their questions, and there was one issue that was being hashed out with the engineers. So we are on track to have everything ready for the fall. Also, the grant application for accessibility upgrades to town buildings has been submitted, and it would fund a number of things at the municipal offices and the library, along with accessible voting booths. So many thanks to Peg and COA Director Melissa Sargent for their work on this. We also, as you may recall, received a grant for an energy fellow who started on June 2nd. He attended the National Grid Energy Summit at Holy Cross the next day, followed by a tour of the municipal offices and a project meeting the day after. He is currently reviewing the energy consumption at town buildings, along with the audit reports that were part of the facility study, to make a priority list of projects that the town should consider undertaking and looking for grant funding for. He's also reviewing the specialized energy code in preparation for the Climate Leader community application that the Energy Committee is working on. Work took place under the first part of the 2024 Green Communities Grant to further weatherize the town offices last Thursday and Friday. Crews were on site blowing in roof insulation. The next step of this project involves upgrades to the building management system to address ongoing HVAC issues. We have received confirmation from the contractor that the work will be done by the end of the summer in order to be able to apply for a fall Green Communities Grant, which is a requirement. And we also have fully expended our 2 FY state budget earmarks. One was for $40,000, which went toward the purchase of materials for the public safety reno project, and a second for $25,000, which was used to purchase 15 computers and accessories, which we would not have been able to purchase otherwise. So many, many thanks to our state legislators, Senator Robin Kennedy and Representative Meg Kilcoyne, for helping us in obtain those earmarks, which have helped us tremendously. And speaking of Assabet, the project is on pause for the summer, but we will be working on procurement for the metal fabrication of the ductwork that needs to be done that Assabet can't do for the HVAC system, along with the fire alarm and sprinkler systems. And we have had a transition in project managers. Wayne Coulson has unfortunately retired, but the project is being overseen by Jay Isgro. We had a meeting with the architect, and I'm confident that he will be able to continue leading us with the project. Do you want me to pause there?
Yeah, why don't we? We'll probably come back to it in between the next one.
Sure.
So it's 6:15, and so I think we'll go back to hearings that had times on them. The request for an all-way stop at Marlboro, Chapin and River Road East, and a stop sign at Crosby Road.
I think Fred's here
Yep.
for us.
Hey,
Hello, like the attire.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we have now up on Crosby Road is actually a yield sign coming off Crosby on alignment. I've had several requests in the past and, a lot of concerns with people coming down the hill and no one slowing down. When we were up there working, I witnessed it. And it's pretty dangerous because if you're on Crosby, to actually yield, you're basically looking out your back window, the way the road's enters. And I think it would be a better solution to have a stop sign here instead. I presented it to the Traffic Safety Board and they were on board as well, to change that one. And now would be the time because we have to put new pavement markings down anyway, and we have to hot top when that's done. And then the all-way stop, that actually started, so traffic safety at one time, and there was some people that came in looking to have that done. And at the time, it's like, I don't know how to go about doing it. So I put our speed trailer down there and just got some data and I sent it off to the traffic engineer I deal with. And he ran it. And so we were going back and forth a little bit. A lot of it was speed, and you can't put a stop sign into control speed. And he reinforced that as well. it was like a month, maybe a month and a half later, he reached back out to me because Mass DOT was looking for towns and cities that had trouble intersections that were looking to convert them to always stops. And he's like, I think this is a candidate. So he sent me all the information on it. I looked into it some more. We had a study done on it, which was like traffic study for speed. And then they had a turn counter down there. So there was so much involved with it. I got a 201-page report back on. And the majority of it were crash statistics.
Mhm.
Mass DOT felt that's a perfect candidate for it. So what I'm looking for is your approval to actually sign into it well. The only thing we have to do is they're supplying all the signs, the posts, nuts, bolts. We install it all. I will have to reach out to Hudson, because some of the signage will be in their town as well. Which will convert everything to an always stop, because right now it's only a stop on Marlboro and Chapin. And the majority of crashes are happening from people pulling off Chapin, and people coming from Hudson. And they're mostly angle crashes. So we're hoping to go through with that. And then we have to do the pavement markings. So I would sign into a 2-year contract with them. Yeah, basically, if anything happens, it's our problem to upkeep the signs. If someone hits them, steals them, that kind of thing. That would fall on the town. And then ultimately, in the end, I know there was talk about trying to limit streetlights, but it'd be great if we could have a new streetlight installed down there to light up the intersection, if we can do that in the end. So right now, if the project goes through, they're trying to rush it along because they're getting it through funded money. So everything would be up and running by September. So we would have to post it 2 weeks before with certain verbiage on a signboard and then for up to a month afterwards. Basically just telling them new traffic pattern and things like that. So I'm just looking for your approval to actually go through with it. Messed up.
And didn't someone email the select board saying that there's been like 3 crashes in the last couple of
Set up
weeks
for
even?
email.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the past few weeks, there's been, I know of 2 anyway down that way.
I almost don't want you to fix Lyman Road, that little blip, because that forces you to slow down. And you know where I live, I'm there. I see it, when I'm walking. I've almost gotten picked off on that. My concern is if you put a stop sign there, are people gonna blow through it? And I know this is probably an Eric question, but can we park a cruiser there for a little while? I mean, just to
Talk
get
to 'em.
people to know that it's, now you stop, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, we would also
you
have to
put
put an
those
advance
signage,
warning
right?
stop sign up
Yeah.
as well, indicating stop ahead.
Yeah.
So that would be somewhere between Kent Pond's house and the intersection.
Yeah, so if you could not fix Lyman, that little lip, that would be,
Oh, at the joint?
Mhm.
I don't even know when they're coming back for that. They came back into town to do a little piece on Sawyer Hill, and it's like a filler for them.
oh, they came in, they were on my road, they were digging up all your grates and then throwing their crap on my lawn, which I
I
had
told
to
them
take
to.
care of. I figured that, thank you.
I said, she doesn't mind, don't worry
He
about it.
doesn't mind, leave that stuff
Over
on
there.
their lawn. Yeah, that's my only concern right there, is that they don't now.
Well, we discussed it too, like, they're blowing stop signs everywhere nowadays. COVID gave some really bad habits. And they haven't broken them. And we said that, we could put a stop sign up and they're gonna blow through it anyway. I see it, the same ones every morning on my ride into work. So I'm just trying to get the right people at the timing so I can slow them down while they're coming through.
Is there any way to check how effective it is after it goes in, or?
The stop sign?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other than like word of mouth, I mean, I can't see myself
Okay.
pinning up. there
No,
for-
well, no, I wasn't.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be on our Facebook page. And then I know there are a lot of walkers. I know there's a lady that, I think she's from Walnut Street. She walks the loop almost every day. So I would have to rely on like people.
Okay.
Had a quick question on the cruiser up there request. Did you want that, I assume, once the stop sign is installed?
Yeah, or something there. I mean, you know, the sign is great, but unless there's truly someone sitting there. And they're not gonna pay attention to it anyways. I mean,
Oh, no.
Well, some people will,
Some may,
and they'll
but-
pay more attention to a stop sign that's there than a stop sign that's not.
Yeah. even the slow down California roll is better than not even yielding.
Right.
You know, even the forward, the always stop, people are still gonna blow this. You know, it's what they're doing nowadays.
Right.
You know, no one wants to be behind anybody.
Is there a motion? Is there more conversation?
I'll keep an eye on it. I'll just go sit down there. Mhm.
I see Peg will give us data afterwards.
Do you want to take a book? You want to take it?
Yeah, I do. I want to take a book. I will gladly stand up and look out my window and not a problem, so.
I think the senior workout program.
So.
Senior work
Drive
program.
down Crosby to the dump, not pointing to anybody specifically, but you know,
All right, motion to approve
Second.
the recommended traffic
seconded.
changes.
All in favor?
I,
Aye. There we go. 5 more
Excellent.
stop signs in town.
Thank you very much.
And I've made a note to talk more about streetlights, because some are definitely there for safety, and it doesn't, I don't think I have a magic number. It's just, I think there's some around town that aren't needed.
Right.
But, you know, things that definitely improve safety are ones that are probably worth saving.
what did
Yeah.
you say? They were like 99,
We really don't have that many
Um,
streetlights.
Yeah, there's between 70 and 90.
which
Yeah,
I
still
was,
counting.
yeah, amazed.
I now drive, when I drive around at night, I look for where some of them are, and some I like, why is that one even there? It's
Those
the
people
middle of the
don't
street, it's not
still-
near an intersection, it's,
Yeah, and actually,
Speak of
those,
the devil.
those are the ones that were on our list for the upgrade.
yeah,
There's 3 or 4 out there that basically belong to the person in front of their house.
yeah.
So,
I was not paying electricity for them, then I don't care as much.
yeah, exactly. All right, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nice to
much.
See you.
LED, so the.
I know.
Yeah.
We did cut a lot from the electric bill, and so as long as the bill starts coming down, we're probably in good shape. So you want to go back to town administrator, as we have 5 more minutes until the 6:30 public hearing?
I sure can. We have a number of items going on under personnel. Conservation Chair Carolyn McDonald, outgoing Conservation Agent Maddie Vandenboom, and myself interviewed 7 candidates for
Wow.
the open Conservation Agent position. 3 of them were actually so good that we're moving forward to a second round interview, and that will be held on the evening of July 1st. The police department is actually in the process of holding interviews for the 11th officer. 12 applications were received. 6 of the candidates who passed the PAT were interviewed on Thursday, and 3 candidates were actually interviewed today. And Chief is here, may have more up-to-date information than me, but I'll leave it at that. And
I emailed them all, I gotta sleep on it another night.
I hear they're all quite good as well. So if you are so inclined to hire 3 really good police officers, if we had the budget, this would be a great opportunity to do so, but unfortunately, we don't. We've also posted for the Community Preservation Act part-time admin assistant, and we are working with the library on the extra hours for library assistant position funded beginning July 1st. Moderator Barry Eager has appointed Sheena Bryan to the Finance Committee, which fills the remaining vacancy left by Julie Malik and brings us up to a full slate. Sheena attended her first FinCom meeting last week, and we look forward to working with her. There is an open position in the open full-time position in Fire EMS that Chief McQuillan will be looking to fill. And finally, we are working with financial consultant Eric Kinshirf and his firm to wrap up FY25 in order to make sure we get everything out and on time this year.
And so tax rate setting, which is one of the things that has to happen before they can put out the bills, we need to make sure that happens September.
I would say September, early October.
Okay. And so we think the assessor's office will be ready to present at that time?
Yeah, the assessor's office wasn't the issue, so I don't anticipate that holding us up at all. It's really being able to financially close out FY25.
Yep.
Want me to pause again or?
No, keep going. I think that's.
Oh, sorry, it's 6:25.
Yep.
Also, unfortunately, Lisa and I met with Brian Stevens, who is the current owner of the former Spooky World property. He has indicated that he will be putting the property up for sale. He did state that it was a very difficult decision, but the challenges, including access to water, meeting fire code requirements for the museum, and the extensive ongoing renovation costs have unfortunately rendered the project infeasible. So that's where we stand with that. Also working with the library on procurement for their shelving for the interior review that was approved, interior renovation that was approved at town meeting, and working with historical on the historical clothing accessioning consultant. We did draft a contract for that consultant that is being reviewed right now by the Historical Commission. I also had the opportunity to meet with John Blumack regarding the South Commons Field renovation project. So there's about 6 components to that project. He's provided a scope for each. Some of them do require design plans. So we are working to figure that piece out, and then we can put the project out to bid. And it's basically going to happen in 3 phases. I'm pleased to report that the FY24 audit is complete, and the report does not show any findings or material weaknesses. I just want to really thank June Poland and Kathy Murphy for all of the work that they did to make this a wonderfully successful audit process as usual, but it was a particularly challenging year, so extra thanks and commendation goes to both of them. Riverbridge updates. Sudbury Valley Trustees is finally ready to take over the conservation restriction potentially for the River Run property at Riverbridge. They were waiting until everything was wrapped up with Horseshoe Pond before they wanted to move forward in looking at this property. They're going to be doing a property walk in early July, and this is the first step in the property acquisition process. So if you recall, we can buy it for $1. And that we have to have a third party hold the CR in order for us to do so, and also to submit a request to the state to modify the CR so the wells can be used by other parties beyond just ourselves as the property owner. Also can report that parcel 9 at Riverbridge has been sold to a developer who plans to build a venue hall with retail, restaurants, and a mini supermarket. This is the parcel in front of the apartment complex where the old liquor store and the small house is located. The proposed mixed-use development is in line with the existing overlay district for Riverbridge and will consist of 2 buildings, a 15,000 square foot building and a 2-story, 8,000 square foot per story building, along with 250 parking spaces. This developer has built and currently operates a venue hall in Westboro that is very successful. So he would like to replicate that here. And research into the septic system at the 1870 Town Hall has determined there are inconsistencies and questions regarding property lines and ownerships amongst those properties up there. That may not be surprising to folks.
Not shocked.
They've recommended that we first conduct a title search to understand our rights and allowed areas of use in order to resolve this matter. So I've asked for a quote to see, and I would recommend using funds from 1870 Town Hall revolving to potentially pay for this work, but I will bring that back before the board when we have the quote. And last but not least, we will be getting a new website for free, which is kind of exciting. We're moving away from Drupal and into CMS. Civics Plus is our company that does our website. We also are still working with Capital Strategic Solutions on updating and reorganizing the content of our website. We will be meeting on July 8th at Berlin Memorial School to discuss the possibility of relocating elections to that location. And finally, I have declared the town's 1946 muster fire truck surplus so that it can be sold. And that's what I have for you.
Thanks. I think we'll hold questions until after we're done the next hearing, but I'll try to remember that we have questions to get back to. And so that brings us to 6:30, which is the cable license renewal needs ascertainment public hearing.
Yes. So you would need a motion to open the public hearing and then the opening statement.
Yep. So is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Let's see. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Berlin's hearing on the Charter Cable License Renewal. Notice of this hearing was advertised in the Clinton item for 2 successive weeks. Copies of the legal advertisement have been entered into the record as hearing exhibits. By the way of brief background, Charter Cable Television license expires on May 4th, 2026. The Federal Cable Act provides for towns to hold public ascertainment proceedings, including a public hearing to identify public and town cable-related needs. The process of ascertainment, I should have practiced that word many more times before I did this tonight, of community cable needs will remain open after the close of this hearing, so that there will be further opportunity for comments to be submitted to the town. In this proceeding, we are going to be accepting comments about all cable-related matters of interest to the public, including but not limited to customer service and the town's needs regarding local studio, local programming, and channels for public, educational, and government access. Members of the select board may also have questions or comments. We are ready to accept comments from the public and interested parties, and so welcome all parties to please stand and state your name and address before commenting. To participate through the Zoom platform, please show your interest in speaking by raising the hand symbol in the meeting controls. Anyone who's speaking, please try to keep your comments to no longer than 4 minutes. And so that's the opening statement that I had to read.
I don't believe we have anyone in the audience. Do we have anyone online who would like to? Oh, I'm sorry. We have Bill August with us, who is our cable attorney. Bill, I believe I've promoted you and you're welcome to introduce yourself and continue on with our hearing.
Thank you very much. This is Bill August. I've been representing municipalities in cable renewal for many, many years. And I just wanted to say before we get started, the representative from Charter is informed me that she would be available just to introduce herself, Nancy Clark, at the very beginning of the hearing, because she does have a schedule conflict. And so I wanted to note that and see if Nancy could come on. Nancy has represented Charter in renewals since coming on board there, and has proven to be a great resource to the towns and cities, not just on the renewals, but on being responsive to customer issues. So if okay with the town and the board and Kristen, we could invite Nancy from her telephone access to say a few words.
I assume she's the guest with the
603.
yeah, the 603 number.
I guess that's
believe
it. Yeah.
so. And I have allowed her to speak. It looks like she is muted, so she would just need to unmute and then she is welcome to speak.
Right. Nancy, can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I was having a hard time getting myself unmuted, and there was a lot of background noise, so apologies for that. Good evening, everyone. As Bill August said, my name is Nancy Clark. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Massachusetts for Charter Communications, and I'm sorry that I wasn't either able to be there in person tonight or attend by Zoom. I do have a corporate dinner tonight that I have to attend, but I thought it was important to introduce myself as the representative that will be working on the cable relicensing with you all, and as your resource for anything from trouble that your residents in Berlin have with their cable subscriptions, or with challenges that you all might have with public television, for example. So please, use me as your resource in order to be able to resolve any of those challenges that you might have. And I look forward to working with you all and with Attorney August in the relicensing process.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Do we have a moment for a question? I don't think I have anything that I need to say now to her, so.
No, Nancy, thank you so much for attending. We truly appreciate you stopping by, and we look forward to working with you on our 10-year license renewal. And I understand you have worked with Bill before. We're happy to have Bill as part of our team and look forward to getting together and working on our agreement.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I will go so I can take care of my other obligation tonight, but I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
All right,
joining
bye-bye.
us.
Thank you very much.
Can I
Is
say one
is
thing? Oh,
is
sorry.
Brittany here or someone from the access provider
Brittany is here. She is also filming tonight, so she is in the other room,
Oh,
but I believe she's coming over.
Yeah.
She is here.
Well done.
because before Brittany speaks, may I just say one or two words of background?
Sure.
As noted in the opening statement read by the chair, and consistent with the Federal Cable Acts, the town is supposed to provide the public an opportunity to comment on the town's needs. So conceptually, this is a very simple kind of hearing. The town doesn't decide anything or take action. I like this kind of hearing. We just have to listen to testimony about needs. So, and the Cable Act specifically says the renewal standard is whether the company's proposal meets the cable needs of the town in light of the costs thereof. So the background relative to information from Brittany, from other members of the public, from municipal, from anyone tonight and going forward, because ascertainment of needs, while it includes a public proceeding, it's actually an ongoing process where we can develop other information beyond the close of the hearing. So the $64,000 word is needs. And that's why I say the cable ascertainment hearing is conceptually simple. We're here to listen about needs. So then when we get into the real business of renewal negotiations, we're informed by information about what the needs are. And to Brittany's credit, she's already started providing Kristen Rubin, the town administrator, some documentation of needs. So we're already have that in process. And I'll turn it over now back to the town.
We do have someone online. I don't know if that person was looking to provide comments. If you are, could you please raise your hand and I'll bring you forward?
Then while we're in that, we could have Brittany
Yep.
start. If you want
Absolutely.
someone who's probably most connected to what the
Knowledgeable.
needs and knowledgeable what the needs
So
might be.
if
Help
you
improve.
read out loud, our budget needs statement, sort of our operating needs in the next 10 years. That document that I had prepared previously.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, feel free to summarize pieces of it too. I think we'll put both of those documents sort of directly into the record so that all of it is there, but
Mhm.
yes. Highlights would be great.
Yeah, so basically in the last 10 years, Berlin Cable Access has grown significantly. 10 years ago, we would cover a handful of meetings, some primary ones like school committee, select board, perhaps finance committee during budget time. But now meeting coverage in Berlin is comprehensive. We cover all the meetings that take place in town. So that's been an incredible increased activity with cable access and that, that need continues to grow. So basically we have the increased meeting coverage. We have a need for additional part-time staff. As this need for meeting coverage has increased, the need for additional people to record meetings has increased, and we are financially constrained to the point where we, can't necessarily meet that need well. We additionally need funding for additional training for staff. Technology moves very quickly. 3 years ago, we did not have, the setup that we have here. We just had, one field camera and a microphone on a table. So things have changed considerably. And, as equipment changes, we need to train staff for that. Community outreach, we would like to expand as well. Awareness of the station, access for all residents to our recording, specifically public meetings, transparency and knowledge with the residents of the town is, you know, vitally important. It helps for smooth government. Additionally, we would like to expand educational access. So our Berlin Cable Access's involvement with the public school system at BMS and Tohoto as well. You know, we currently cover a lot of events that happen at the schools, concerts and programs and things like that, but also occasionally we provide sort of curriculum enrichment with video production, and we'd love to be able to introduce that into the curriculum and work with staff and, you know, the people at the schools to sort of make that happen. So our sort of goals for this upcoming renewal are to assume control and programming and broadcast of channel 192. So formally, channel 192 was broadcast from Tohoto. Tohoto had a video production course and they were responsible for putting all the content on the server and they broadcast from that site. That video production course is no longer in existence. And the way that the feed is sent, it's sent from the Boylston channel. So Boylston took over that 192 feed and broadcasts from Boylston. So all of our content here in Berlin is actually Boylston's content. So the next step for Berlin would be to regain access or regain control of channel 192 here in Berlin and put our own programming on that channel. As part of a contract with cable providers, there are 3 PEG channels, PEG, and our E right now is in Boylston's control. So one of our goals for this contract would be to get it back under Berlin control. Additional goals for the upcoming term would be increasing programming regarding local issues, news, and events, increasing programming regarding senior news, issues, events, and opportunities with the senior center. I know the senior center is very much looking to grow their activities and offerings to residents of the town, and we would like to be a part of that. Programming by and for the town's youth, including non-school opportunities and activities. So arts, culture, events, sports, internships, community service. And then as part of the necessary PEG expansion, the town sees the need for increasing multi-organizational collaborations with local organizations and members of the public. So we can provide students and the public with video and audio skills and help members of the community to better understand the technology and their access to our services. We also see the need for expanding the bulletin board announcements so that it's another opportunity for the community to share information about things happening in town. I think, you know, largely people tend to look to social media for local events and news and things like that, which, you know, obviously serves its purpose, but to have a publicly owned format to share information that is free of advertising and outside interests is important. So, you know, sort of in conclusion, there's a really strong community need and interest in public access activities. Berlin Cable Access has been extremely active and is ready to grow more and just needs the funding to make that happen.
So because we don't own channel 192, is that why I don't have 192 on my cable?
So you should have 192. Maybe you need to reprogram your TV. Okay, I have 192 right in the other room and it's playing Boylston's content.
I mean, it would be ideal because if you look at other towns, the screens just scroll, and as we're constantly trying to figure out how to get the message out,
Right.
people don't go out to Facebook, you know, they may not go out to YouTube. So if you have cable,
Mhm.
it's there. That's not, that's an
Some-
outlet that we're
Yeah,
struggling with.
some towns choose to use one of their public access channels exclusively running their bulletin boards, so those informational slides are up all the time. Obviously, we can decide what to do with that channel, whatever we wish. But the old sort of setup worked fine when Tohoto had their video production course and they were broadcasting from there, but since that is now defunct, it's time for Berlin to have their channel back.
Would we ever consider like putting something like that up in the hallway or that, so when people come
Oh.
in, they can see?
Yeah, we absolutely could put up monitors that display our bulletin board system, like kind of a in-office.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to
We-
college many
Yeah.
Yep.
years ago.
Yeah, that's
It was-
exactly what it's designed for. I mean, we put it out over the air, but it absolutely could be sent to monitors internally.
And then the town has invested in a technology for hybrid meetings so we have not relied entirely on PEG spending for all the stuff we've done, correct?
The hybrid
Is part of it.
meetings,
Was that
I
part of PEG spending?
thought
That
paid
came out
for
of
PEG.
cable
Okay.
funding, the purchase of the server.
Right.
The town paying for, that was a capital request.
But as a whole, we've been spending the money we have. It's not like the
Yes,
PEG funding that's coming in
absolutely.
and just sitting there.
No,
The
we
town
do
is spending
not
on
have-
good things and
Yeah, there's no
spending on
check,
some other.
unfortunately.
So along with more training for your folks, will you need more equipment, updated equipment?
Yeah,
Over time, you always need to update equipment. Usually like normal lifespan of this sort of equipment is about 10 years. So on average, we expect to have to replace the server every 10 years. So we
Mhm.
just replace the server. So chances are
We're
You
good
know,
for a little while.
within the next contract period, we will need to replace the server again. And likewise, we need to replace cameras as they die out, microphones, all those sort of things. So it's definitely not like sort of you buy this one thing and you're good. Unfortunately, with technology and electronics, they age out.
I know you noted volunteers too. Do you have any volunteers now? Do we need to put the word out to get you volunteers?
Volunteers would be amazing. We do not
Okay.
have any volunteers.
Maybe
Right.
that's something we can.
right. And it's a paid position to help record some of the meetings, correct? You have some paid opportunities in here?
Yep,
Yep.
there are paid opportunities through the town. There are positions available. And I don't know if the town would, consider it, but in some other towns that I manage, they also use the senior tax work off
Mhm.
as an opportunity to get some labor as well.
You happen to have the COA director sitting behind you who handles the senior workout program, so there's a perfect time to put in a plug for that. So we'll keep that in mind.
Right, because to hit every meeting in town for a couple of
It's-
hours
yeah.
is more than you could ever get to, even if you wanted to do all that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't
and
video
even
editing,
with
yeah,
even with the staff that we have and the people that I have
Right.
working for me, sometimes we don't have anyone available to cover meetings, and sometimes we have to, set things to auto record and
Yep.
things like that, which is not how I would like to do things, but
Right.
sometimes I'm forced to do it that way.
Yeah, you've done great with the resources you have, getting to as many meetings as you do.
Well, thank you.
Other questions or comments on these?
No, I was impressed with the
Yeah.
report and didn't realize how much more we could do if
Right.
we had the funding to do. Which would be a benefit for the entire town regardless of age, because as we're always looking for volunteers and people to get involved.
Mhm.
Well, you're sitting there doing this, stop on the channel, that's gonna help.
Right, and it does reach an audience that even some of the other stuff doesn't reach, so. Cause you don't,
Yeah. And I really appreciated the materials you put together. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, there's no problem getting these materials out to Bill, right? Has he already seen these?
He has already seen them, yeah.
Good. Cause I think they're well organized and make a good case for everything you've asked for there.
Absolutely.
And then we take comments, so if people watching or hearing or otherwise have comments on things they want, things we could be doing with public access, comments about charter.
Mhm.
And this is just the TV side, because where this has nothing to do with charter internet or internet service providers. This is just because the feed that comes into PEG comes on
Yeah,
the
and
television
it's
side.
specifically about cable access and our funding, so If somebody doesn't like the channel selections the charter has, that's not this forum.
Right. Well, and I usually, once a year when I get the like formal report the charter has to do about the complaints people have done, because I see them sometimes on social media. I tend to post on social media, like, here's the form you have to fill out to count in the survey. And even pushing for the last several years, we get only 4 or 5
Small.
formal complaints a year, which is, any business that can do 99% without complaints is decent.
And I would like to mention,
Yeah.
for anyone who isn't able to attend the hearing this evening, they can also submit their feedback or support for cable access via email
Mhm.
at cableaccess@townofberlin.com, and that will be included in our report to charter as well.
And do we need a formal letter from the select board saying that we strongly support our cable access and it's up to do?
I figured as much.
Right.
Bill, can you speak maybe a little bit to next steps in the process?
Yes. One, following up on the scope of the cable license and what it can address and not address. We cannot address internet or telephone in a cable license. We're prohibited from getting into that. The main areas are the local facilities, the local channels and the studio. But anything else having to do with cable, other than rates, which are deregulated and very important, and program lineup, which is deregulated. There are many other categories relating to cable that are within the scope of a cable license, such as charters, insurance, protecting the town, indemnification language, right-of-way management, restoration of the streets. So we can look at and do address in the license other aspects of cable infrastructure and cable service to the extent permitted by law, but not internet and not telephone. That's a no-no. We're not allowed to include that in a cable license. That doesn't mean we cannot communicate with Charter about those issues. If there are problems, we can talk to them and try to, outside of the license, have them address other areas that are outside of cable. But those are sort of the broad parameters. The next step is to even after the close of the hearing, consistent with the Cable Act, continue doing our homework to identify needs, because the Cable Act contemplates an ongoing ascertainment phase, which continues for a while. And that can result in responding to the question just asked about the select board doing a letter. That can result in the select board issuing a letter supporting the needs that we identify in ascertainment. So yes, absolutely, a letter from the select board is a great thing to do, but it should be informed by the documents that Brittany will be providing, which I would request that they be provided as a draft at this stage, because we do want to review them and see if there are things that we think might be added or might strengthen the cable access documentation of needs. So we should do a little bit more work on Brittany's documents, which look excellent. I don't see any issue with them, but just as a matter of due diligence, I usually recommend that they come in at marked draft in case we see from the town's perspective needs that we want Brittany to address further. And then once we have that, then the selectmen letter can be informed by and reinforce the things that are in that documentation. Usually the two main elements of documentation are the operating budget data to show justification for continued charter financial support, and the equipment budget to show justification for the franchise fee that charter will ultimately agree to at some level to cover both operating budget and capital needs. So yes, a letter from the selectmen is a great thing, and let's get the documentation more finalized so we can reflect that and incorporate it. So the basic overview of the timetable is public hearing, some ongoing ascertainment. Then I draft a first draft of a cable renewal license, and that's really where the rubber meets the road, that asks for a franchise fee that will cover the operating budget and capital needs data. And then I'll provide that draft license to Kristen and parts of it to Brittany and the select board to review. Well, the town should review the whole thing. And then if it's okay, the draft license, we send it to Nancy and the head of the legal department, Paul Abbott, to use that as a platform for negotiations. And then based on the negotiations, we, usually reach some type of package that will provide an adequate operating budget, capital budget, and the other cable-related items. So it's really ascertainment, drafting a license, negotiation, and then finalizing review of the draft license, and then circulating it to charter. And then at the end, you have to have a public hearing on the proposed license document. So there's a hearing at the beginning to let the public in town know we're welcoming their comments, and then there's a hearing at the end to allow comment on the proposed final license, and a lot of negotiation and drafting in between with some ascertainment. That's basically it.
Thank you.
There
Bob.
is a formal process which rarely comes into use. The Cable Act does provide that if a town wants to deny a renewal, which is rare, usually the focus is on getting a new deal, not getting a new cable company. Because if you do a denial, they immediately appeal it to federal court, and towns, work it out. They keep banging away at it through what's called the informal renewal process. The Cable Act allows you to just keep on going and negotiating until you work it out, and then have a final hearing on it. But if a town really wanted to deny, they would have to issue an RFP to the incumbent with formal specifications of needs, as opposed to just providing them a draft license. So that is a legal option. I just like to disclose that. It's in the Cable Act. There is a denial track. If a town were interested in that, they would have to exercise their formal process rights by issuing, it's an RFP, not to the world, but just to the incumbent, not less than 4 months before expiration. So then we would really have to be on a much faster track. But it's so rare for that to ever happen. But I have to mention it in case someone would say, well, why didn't you tell me we wanted to deny and you didn't mention how that was done? So usually it's the informal, just keep negotiating off the draft that we provide.
Great. Is there more we have to do during this portion of the public hearing?
I don't believe so.
We're gonna put something on our sort of the town website, at least to let people know they can continue to submit things and submit to the email address that Brittany mentioned. Just in case we
Yeah,
have
if you
anything
have
else.
something on the website, welcoming input about, town and public needs, cable needs, that's good.
Great. Okay.
All right, and I'm
Yeah.
very informal, so if anyone has questions, feel free to just try to call me or send me a time and we can talk.
I believe then you can close the
Yep.
public hearing.
Great.
there a-
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks. Is there a
Good night.
motion to
Okay.
close the public hearing?
So
And seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Our next time certain event is, the next hearing is at 7:30, so we have a few minutes here. I think we can go back to the town administrator report and see if there's any questions for Kristen on her report.
I
wanna go
do.
first? Go
Oh,
ahead.
all right, I'll go first. So Kristen, you had mentioned that the muster truck.
Yes.
Right, that the muster truck that you're looking at that. What about the other truck? Is the muster truck the one outside or is the muster truck the one still in the building?
The muster truck, to my understanding, is the one outside. The other, I think he might
Called the
have,
knot or
Oh,
something,
that's right, then.
which is older.
Yes.
I believe Chief let me know about the other one. If you could hold on just a second, I'm just checking. I think he was starting with this one and I will follow up with him. Oh, here we go. Working on selling the muster truck. And let me follow up with him
Yeah.
about the other vehicle.
And where would that money go?
So that anytime that we have a sale of a vehicle, it's basically returns back to the general fund. It'll flow to free cash as an unanticipated revenue. And then it could be appropriated at a future town meeting for a specific purpose, but it doesn't flow back to the department without appropriation.
On River Bridge, with the new buildings that are proposed, and I wish that he was still here, but he left. Traffic concerns, I mean, entrance, exit, are they planning on using the rotary? What is that gonna do? People are already concerned about traffic in that area, and if you're adding 250 potential spots for an event.
I did not hear, so I did watch the planning board meeting where this was discussed. It was a preliminary conceptual site plan at that time, so they were just seeking initial feedback from planning board on, you know, what did they think? Should there be landscaping? Where are we at with anything minor that we should change? I didn't hear a lot of discussion about traffic, but I can certainly, if the board would like, just reach out to planning and see, you know, either put that on their radar or see if anybody has approached them and what their thoughts are on it.
Yeah, they are using it at that land as originally intended, because that's part of the development agreement.
Correct.
So that type of stuff at least was always planned to be there.
I know that there was talk about making use of an existing access road that, or exits that were there out into the rotary. Maybe the road isn't there, but that it,
From the
is there an
the
existing?
liquor store directly to the road?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're probably using that one.
Okay,
but that's.
I'll
not a
get
good
more
spot
info.
Because that's right behind the bus stop.
okay. Let me get some more info on it
Yeah.
and I'll send it over.
Do you have any timing-ish of the proposed build, or what are the next steps for that? Or
I-
because PB
yeah.
says it is so, it is so.
So they have to go through the full planning board process. My understanding is they were just selected as the buyers of that property.
Mhm.
There was a hotel interested as well, if you'll recall. The owners of the property have selected this developer because they felt it was more in line with the overlay district that is
Mhm.
existing. So let's see what I made a note of here. They will be coming back. Let's see.
And assuming that there will be a public hearing, yes, no, love to hear what the folks in town think.
Yeah, they'll have to be there. I mean, they just did a preliminary thing, so they still have the
Yeah.
process with real
This
numbers
is-
and real designs.
This is
Still has to happen.
very much at the beginning, so they are back. I believe they were talking about end of summer. I'm just looking up here.
The only reason that I ask is that I know
Yep.
falseness very quickly turns into truth without any information behind it. So would like PB to get in front of this before the rumors become rampant about what actually is going to go down there or what people think will end up going down there.
Okay. Just a couple other notes I took, that there's a focus on walkability, community engagement, and visual appeal. They said this is an early stage concept plan, so very, very much at the beginning. As I mentioned before, that the gentleman is experienced with this type of facility. He said the venue hall in Westboro offers a great cost-effective solution for events, and it's been a big hit. So it has brought in revenue to the local businesses as well, because people coming into town for those venues, you know, using gas station or, you know, other local businesses that are right there. So I will see if I can get a timeline from the planning board and report back on that.
Do you have a timeline-ish for the selling of Spooky World?
He did not give us a specific time. I believe his intent was to put it on the market rather quickly, and then it just depends on
Who's gonna buy it?
the interest. Yep.
And then last question, if we are successful and SVT wants to take over that land, how do we enlist the help of Senator Kennedy and Representative Kilcoyne to help chug that through the wheels that spin in Boston?
So once we have a third party that is signed on to hold that CR, we have to submit an application to the EEA. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that we send a copy of it to the representative's office and ask if they could keep an eye and kind of keep us informed as it goes through its process. I understand it can be a bit of a lengthy one. We're also going to be, you know, a bit hampered by the Article 97 Act, and that's what we're having to apply basically to work through that act in order to modify the conservation restrictions. So right now, under the 5th modification to the development agreement, we have until December 31st, 2026.
And EEA is short for those who
Energy,
have no idea.
Energy and Environmental Affairs, I believe. Is that right, Lisa? Does that sound right?
Goodness, I don't.
Sorry, I mean, put you on the spot.
List of.
You were sort of nodding, so I thought you were knowing in the know. I apologize.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you, Scott.
Lisa?
I was just wondering if we have any information about how Capital Strategic is doing with the website. Are you getting more? I know that, I think last time you had mentioned that there were some groups that still needed to get their information in or have that meeting. How are we with that?
Yeah, I know they have still had some difficulty contacting groups. I think one of the things we probably need to do is send out, you know, another email asking folks and, you know, probably schedule a meeting with Capital Strategic to figure out where their stopping points have been, because I know they've gotten pretty far with most groups, but there's just been a couple, and it's hard when it's volunteer boards and committees, obviously, too. So we can see if there's anywhere that we can help, especially now that budget season is done. So we'll do some more outreach on that.
That's all I had.
I'm gonna be fine. It's not 7:30 yet for the next public hearing, and so I want to go on to item 5, which is a new thing that we're going to try out and hopefully work, which is a consent agenda. These are items that the chair, me, looking at it, thinks are relatively simple, straightforward, and non-controversial. Doesn't mean they're not worthy of conversation, and so I think if we put anything on a consent item, I think that either one of you two, since I created the agenda, will assume that I'm okay with those being consent items. Want to pull any of them off to chat about further, you should feel comfortable, and we'll do that. I expect that as I do this, especially for the next month or so, there might be things that I put on this that really shouldn't be, that should be pulled off. But I also be nice if things that and I'll sort of see how they go, but the things that fall under other business that should have been part of the consent, I think will be a trial and error, and we'll just get sort of better at as it goes, but I think it might help speed things along. I at least was going to start off for a bit, feeling a need to, at least when we get to the consent item, that I will read them out loud, so that the recordings and other stuff for people who don't have the agenda sitting in front of them know what they are. And I just don't say consent item, you guys say yes, and we move on, so that there's at least a better recording of what we've agreed to. I already know for tonight that 5A, the first item on the consent item, actually has been incorporated into 6A, and so we won't be voting on 5A tonight, so it's just B through F. And that, if you're okay, I will read them.
Works for me.
So the consent item for tonight, the consent agenda for today is to set the time and location for a special fall town meeting for November 17th, 2025 at Berlin Memorial School Gym at 6 p.m. We're going to request the municipal, we're going to approve that from the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust to allow them to perk test Legion Hall. We're going to approve the renewal of the junk dealer license for Berlin Auto Parts. We're going to do an amended letter to the Solomon Pond Mall as a joint letter with Marlboro about sort of supporting the development and continued sort of improvement of that space. And we're to approve the donation of a wooden cabinet for the Council on Aging. Is there questions on those? Someone would like to say anything more about them? Is there a motion to approve items B through F under the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye. And so let's move on to then other business. I almost called it old business. Other business, the first item is the committee reappointments and select, well, committee reappointments says and select board liaisons, but those are two different documents, aren't they?
The select board liaison, I don't have a document
Right.
for per se. The FY24 board and committee reappointments are in the Google Drive. The liaison assignments were something that the board wanted to
Right.
discuss. And so as you have reorganized and we're shifting into FY26, it seems logical to put those two together.
Okay, I'll have to go to the drive. Is there, so I'll start just with the appointments. We have the list of appointments that are in the drive. They're reappointments. Most of them go through June 30th to 26th. These are positions that are all expiring. Are there questions on any of these? Comments on any of these?
What does a field driver do?
I think they are the ones that if
Drive
an
around
animal,
fields?
if an animal gets, this was I asked this my very first year.
Yep.
They are the person who goes and finds any loose animals, who you call if there's a loose cow or a loose horse.
Farm animals as opposed to as regular animals,
Yes,
which
that is
the
the-
animal control officer, they're both positions that are, if I remember correctly, are outlined in state law. And that's why we have two of
Okay.
them. It's not the town sat down at one point and created these positions.
I do know from my husband that Eloise has not requested to be put back on the energy committee. But I believe she is stepping back from that. I'm not sure if have we reached out and asked about reappointments, or did we just kind of,
Right, like, so are these people how many of them have sort of overtly said, yes, I want to continue on versus us just reappointing them?
I reached out to boards and committees. I didn't reach out to individuals who have those singular positions.
We don't always have an email for all of the individual members. So what we do is we reach out to the chairs and ask them to reach out to their membership, and sometimes we hear back and sometimes we don't. So we move forward unless we hear otherwise.
But on the one-offs, like the field driver, those type of things, no, I don't reach out, but my letter that goes out to people says, if you're no longer interested in holding this position, please let us know. And it doesn't take effect unless you become appointed. And I do remember Eloise did tell me to take it off the energy committee. And I forgot.
it's okay.
So we
I
take
live
that
with
off
the
the
energy
list.
chair, so
Right.
easily relay that. There's one other one.
Is
Yeah.
there a typo on line 97 for the woman's first name? And it's L. Catherine and what she goes.
So
by?
it's Catherine.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Take the LL.
I'm gonna ask about I had it a minute. no, let's get it down. Measure of wood and bark.
yes,
Is there a reason that we don't just have Fred do that?
And what
do
does that do?
right. Because I think some of these, again, as we try to shrink things out, that some of these are volunteer things that don't really have much to do, and having town employees that generally do those tasks anyway.
I mean, that is a member of the Conservation Commission. I can certainly speak with Fred if that's something he's willing to take over.
No, the measure of wood and bark is a member of the, like, that title is one of the positions on Conservation
You
Commission.
got it, line 36. Yep, I'm
Yeah.
looking at it.
Okay, so it has to be a conservation member?
No, I don't believe it does. I thought you were saying you didn't want positions taken
Oh,
by
goodness.
non-employees or appointed folks, is what were you getting at?
Uh,
I think I
Just trying to
misinterpreted.
figure out what-
I'm-
It's a measure.
How
of
much
the-
work is involved in that? And.
Probably not a lot.
Right.
Not a lot. That's why
And some of
it's
these
like-
that might be confused because some of the stuff that might be done by the position is already being done by a staff person, to not have
Yeah.
two people doing the same thing.
And that was. kind
And
of my
not
thought.
having a position where potentially a town volunteer is somewhat supervising a town employee, since all town employees should generally be supervised through a chain that ends with you.
This
We are-
actual position is for the measuring of firewood to make sure that it's standard course for the size.
And so
And
they're
we must
literally
appoint it.
going to people's houses and measuring the wood.
I think only if you're
So
selling it.
people that are selling cords of
Right.
wood and make sure they're actually selling them for it.
And it goes back to some of these, I should spend more time, because, well, obviously, we looked at these, but like, we go back to our state representatives of like, why does state law say we have to have someone who measures cordwood? That we have a fence viewer as well, yes,
I believe
That's
they actually do.
standard in every town.
Yeah,
yes. Well, I think a measure of wood and bark is likely standard every town too.
if there's an issue with a fence line between neighbors, they are the arbiters, I believe, of that.
So according to Wikipedia, and we all know how correct that is, a fence viewer is a town or city official who administers fence laws by inspecting new fences and settles disputes arising from trespass by livestock that has escapied their enclosure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my guess is that nobody measures the wood ever.
It is a-
Like,
It is a mass general.
Oh, I know, you
I
have
know.
to.
Now
Yeah.
must.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we could easily just, because we have to do
Have
it
Fred.
similar to the insect one, we could
Yes.
just make that Fred.
Yes.
We often, well, I don't know if you want to go this, but often the fence viewer in my former community was the highway superintendent as well. I mean, I don't know how
I don't want to load.
much
Fred.
you want to load, right?
Well,
But it's not like it's a very often used position, even though it
Yeah.
is a standard position. There are very, much like we have some archaic bylaws, the state has
Yeah.
some archaic general laws.
And the fence, so that would not be the building commissioner, that would be the highway super? Because that screams building commissioner. to
yeah,
me.
it does street building to me as well. Someone who likely had to pull the building permit to build it in the first place.
Could do that as well.
Well, no, because it talks about livestock. So was that Mr. Hanks?
That one,
Your
Uh,
fence
No,
isn't high
the-
enough?
the fence talks about stock.
We had just always, for some reason, it had always been under the purview of the highway superintendent, who was also the
Just-
tree warden as well as the
Nobody- yeah,
fence viewer.
'cause
It
they're
just
getting all
kind
the
of, they're getting
random-
out there and doing
Right.
the random things, as you said.
And honestly, when it talks about the duties, upon request of any citizen, the fence viewer inspected fences to see that they were in good repair and in case of disputes between neighbors, work to resolve their differences. Do you really want a resident getting in between a Hatfield and a McCoy battle?
Yes.
Shouldn't it be someone with a little more oomph behind it?
We can appoint anyone to that position that you would like.
I've never heard the term spiked fences.
I just want to know how these are used,
I don't think
which is
very.
probably never.
Yeah, let's see. So I've been doing this 11 years and I've never had to summon the fence viewer.
Um,
We appoint and then do research. I mean, we could sit here and debate all
Well,
night.
Yeah.
right, our ability to, we can reappoint as we see fit.
Mhm.
So during.
That is totally the purview of the
Right.
select board. I mean, the person could refuse,
I know,
but
right.
I mean, you're welcome to ask if they are willing to be appointed to that position. And if they say no, we would come back with another recommendation for you.
And I feel like we've had this conversation
Sure.
before and it
Mhm.
always comes back and we always push it off.
Right, I'm trying to make a note to come back to this, not, the day of. Cause I think there's always, cause I've always like, I've asked this every year too. We reappoint the police officers, and if we don't, we just fire all the police officers and we have to hire a whole new batch. I mean,
I
do
think
towns
that's-
ever do that?
That's mass general
Can't,
law.
because they're under a union contract, but yes, they have to get sworn in and appointed.
I mean, I think someone is trying to remember some of this when we have our state rep and state senator in front of us at some point, pointing out that, again, this is, I mean, we're debating it in a sort of it's not a critical, but all these little things add up over time about all these appointments and all these weird things that exist out there. And so some of these also expire before our next meeting. And so I think despite all of that, I would want us to try to at least appoint much of these, if not all of them, with the idea that with the corrections we've already made.
And so what we could do is you could make the appointment. We could continue to research some of the positions over the summer, to outreach to the state reps as well. And if we find that there has been a change to Mass General Law and there is a position, you can always unappoint and reappoint. You have the ability to do that at any time as well.
If we don't appoint, who comes and complains? If we appoint to it, if like there's a vacancy in one of these, like fence viewer,
Well, if
What-
it's something that needs to happen,
right,
like, your
Yeah.
inspectors, then,
Right, or-
Police
police
What
chief,
if we simply extend out on the ones that were extended out for 2 weeks
right,
or something like that, and
Yeah.
we come back and, or a month or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, some of
Extend
them
out a month so that we're covered for that
Yep.
period of time.
do that.
And then the others, like the basic committee stuff,
right,
we just reappoint.
right. So
those.
the questionable ones are fence viewer, measure of wooden bark.
There was one other one.
Were you looking at field driver?
I think
So
that
that
was
one
the
actually
other one.
has a real, well,
That
real
is-
issue.
He kind of has a real job, but I don't know if Fred wants to chase around cows.
Right,
Shane's that because
Right.
he has
cows.
cows.
The only other one for me is a trench officer, but at least I understand what trenches
Well, that's
are.
already somebody in the,
Highway department, right, yeah.
so that makes sense. So is it just fence viewer and bark and whatever?
Field driver.
Yeah.
Field driver.
I'd be curious,
Or
is there any way we can
yeah.
reach out to those
Others
folks and ask them how often they've
If
been
I-
called upon to do their duty?
Yeah,
I can ask Susanna about
yeah,
fence viewer.
Okay.
We'll do research into those positions and put those back on the agenda for the 7th.
Mhm.
and I think for volunteers and committee members, knowing their email address would be something we should try to do. I think the number of people without email is fewer than it might have been 10 and 20
Yeah,
years ago.
some of, we should try to get updated. Some of our older records were not as accurate or up to date, so
Right.
this has been a challenge, let's say.
Yep.
That, to put this together. We're mulling through it as best we can.
Yep. And so I think we're gonna then, it is the fence wardens and, sorry, the fence viewer and the measure of wood and bark. And then that will extend for 30 days and the rest will do to the terms listed. Sound good?
Mhm.
Yep.
Is there a motion and a second on that?
Motion to approve in that way. That's all I got right now.
Wow,
That's how we're gonna do it.
good job. I'll second that. Well put, motion.
What was that motion?
So the motion
So
was
moved.
So moved.
to
Yes.
extend.
In that
Yeah,
way.
okay, I thought, I didn't know if you
Yeah,
were
it's really
joking.
hot in here. My words are not wording.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so I think if we're looking at committee assignments, they start with line 60, right?
Yes,
And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think there's a dozen.
there's, and also there are elected boards and committees, and that was one thing I wanted to
Mm,
ask, because I
right.
think that it's equally important to be knowledgeable about what's happening at planning board and board of health and those types of, liaisons. So because we haven't really had a formal list of which committees you've wanted to
Right.
have liaisons for, we can put that together, and then you guys can think about it if you want, and we can do those appointments at the next meeting. But it would be helpful to get some guidance on, which
Yep.
committees.
But which committees be on this list? Or just,
Just if you wanted to add any beyond the list, like any of the elected boards as well.
I mean, obviously, planning, you'd ask about planning board a lot. So planning board and board of health and school board, I'm not asking you to be on it, I'm saying ones that we should have elections.
I did my face like
I know,
screen.
yes, yeah, yes.
Sorry. There you go.
If our attempt is to use this to improve some communications across places, probably my hesitation is the amount of meetings that this becomes at some point, and like school board should be part of that too, and they have also then subcommittees to that, and you're right, where does that line ultimately go and become?
Right.
Especially in places, those other elected boards, it's neat to know what's going on there, but we have no authority over any of those.
Right.
So even if they were going in odd places, communication is great, but it's not,
We
I mean,
can't do
these are people
everything.
we appoint, and thus sort of their actions are ultimately reflect on select board.
So my recommendation would be to start, you have a new board member, so you have several committees that your previous board member was on that now do not have a current liaison, and that would be Council on Aging, the Insurance Advisory Committee, Traffic Safety, and ZBA.
She was also on school committee.
Yes, and I would say traffic safety because I go to those and they're during the day. I think that I could cover
Yep.
that,
Mhm.
to take
Yeah.
that one off your
And my
plate.
intent, I didn't want to just sort of rip and replace. Lisa has different interests than Chris did. and so,
Sure.
trying to do some adjustments to that as well. And this list of 12, they all don't meet with equal frequency. So it's not like grab the 4 that you want, because you could end up with 4 that gives you 6 meetings a week, and you can end up with 4 that meets twice every 3 years.
Right.
I don't think any of them are at least that infrequent, but I mean, and so I'm gonna punt to give us time to think about what committees we might want to do, because it's 7:30. I'm gonna take advantage of that. So that we can have one of those committees come to the table and talk to us about an issue that they are having that is also an issue we are having.
So I'll put this on then for 7/7, and I'll put a spreadsheet together of what it is currently, and then.
Yeah, we might say some interest before you get there, because there might be some easier ones, and I have somehow closed the agenda
Nice.
in my
You want
moving
to see
around.
mine?
it. No, I can just, it's gonna take me 3 or more clicks. I try to get rid of some of the tabs from some of the earlier hearings. And so it is 7:30. I think that, yes, come on forward. If there's those, I'd like, Bob can easily join you if you would like, or
They
you can
didn't call
stay
a
back.
meeting.
Huh?
They don't have a meeting scheduled, posted, so
I-
it's in Melissa.
Chair.
No,
can
but chair can always
speak.
speak.
Yeah, as long as they don't have a
As long
quorum.
as they don't have a
Mm.
quorum, the chair is allowed to come forward and speak. Come on. And I'm sure there are other people who might have comments if we get there, although, yeah. And so I think this is, there's a discussion on what to do with sort of around the van and staffing for it. The budget that passed the town meeting was not the one that was recommended by the select board, and so it is figuring out how to sort of proceed forward with that sort of new spending.
So when I initially did the budget, we were trying to hire for 2 positions and keep them under the full time. So we initially wanted 35 hours for the whole week. That was cut to the 28, and then, yes, it was, brought back to town meeting. It's really hard to prove data and show data, honestly, from my perspective, because it's kind of all over the place from previous years. It was in Excel spreadsheets, it was in Word docs, so it's what I could gather, is that when the van was running, which we would have to go back to fiscal 23, there was about 19 to 25 rides a month. And then it did dwindle after that from the numbers that I could find. And I honestly can't speak to what it was or the cause of it. I have heard, which is not, facts. But when you can't have the hours for somebody to, I don't know, commit to a full paycheck. When there's 5 hours this week and 7 hours this week and 12 another week, it's very up and down. People can't, their livelihood isn't there. And so we've had a lot of turnover, again, is what I was told. So I don't know, I wasn't here. But going forward, I did see, I had Peggy Sardell write up kind of what the program was and has been. And she said that there are procedures for the program which were not always followed. So in my opinion, there's a lot of things we can improve on. One is that it was not used for social events. Medical appointments would be our number one, getting people to their doctor's appointments. If they don't go to them and they miss them, that jeopardizes their health. We all have doctors here. We all know that if you cancel today, they're not going to see you tomorrow or in the next couple months. It's going to be a 6-month out. They don't have reliable transportation, so they need to be able to have us bring them. There's some concerns on where we would travel. What are the boundaries? And it's hard. My job is to help the seniors of the community avoid social isolation, get them out to community events, get them to their doctors, get them to wherever they're wanting to go to be with people, whether it's 19 Carter, whether it's a friend in Northbrook, whether they have somebody in an assisted living facility that they want to go see. I think if we help one person a day, that is helping the community. And I know, I understand, 25, how do you get 19 hours a week with somebody? How do you validate that? So my thought at the beginning was we do have 2 people who are willing to volunteer. They have 3 of the days that they can cover while we are getting the van up and running to the full capacity that we would be able to support a 19-hour job or up to 19 hours. I know it's been the chicken and the egg conversation has happened, and it is. I can't prove the need unless I can get something started. So I was trying to rely on volunteers or senior tax work off while we got the numbers to show the need for these people wanting to go to other events or needing medical appointments. I did have a focus group, which Sue Henry from Neshoba Neighbors actually facilitated. She was in attendance, but we did at Northbrook Village. They have had 10 new members sign up since the beginning of the year. And they said it was, during the first quarter. Yep. And so they actually have a wait list now because they don't have enough volunteers to provide the rides and transportation to people that are needing it. And Berlin now makes up 48% of the Neshoba Neighbors total members. So
So people are having to join a membership for things that we could provide to them as part of their taxes already, within the budget. So, Sue did say that 30 members from January through April, and they provided 50 rides to medical appointments, 20 to social events, and 8 for errands, just for Neshoba neighbors for the first quarter. For 30 members. And then we do have Catch Connect running. Bob has taken a ride with them. And the more we get feedback, it's not as reliable, I think, for medical appointments as we would need it to be. During that focus group, I had a woman tell me that she was told 20 minutes for the pickup, and it was 45 minutes by the time they actually got picked up. She was late for her medical appointment. The doctor wouldn't see her. She had to reschedule. So if that's our only focus, I don't know if we work on scheduling. I mean, I think there's going to be a learning curve for me, certainly, on what we can do. And I think some of it will just depend on the riders that we have now versus who rode in the past or what the new needs are. But I'd like to see more people get out of their homes, even if it is for socialization. But I guess that would be, yeah, we do have some things to figure out. I'm not gonna say that we don't. And borders, the boundaries are one of them. Do we go as far as Framingham? Do we cut it off right before Framingham? If that helps one more person or 2 more people get an appointment that they wouldn't be able to get to, why not? Because it wouldn't necessarily take from anybody else, so I'm all for trying to collaborate and get some ideas, because I have not had a chance with this. I started in November, and I think I was here for 3 weeks, and our van driver put in his 2-week notice. So our van has not been running since January. But we have had, like I said, 10 people join Neshoba Neighbors. And then we have had several people just asking what's going on with the van. Is the van up and running? Do you have a driver? What's going on with the driver? And so I think we just kind of need to get it out there. Just try to go. I mean, whether it's the volunteer driving in and out of Northbrook to start, to make sure that they know that it's available. I don't really know what more.
Oh, I have a
Okay.
ton. I'll go last. I have a page and a half, so.
I guess the first thing I would ask would be, how many volunteers are handling from Neshoba Neighbors? How many people is it taking to cover all of these folks' appointments?
That she didn't
Do
give me the
we know?
information on how many
Okay.
volunteers. We're taking-
Total membership in the Neshoba Neighbors, including the 3 towns that it serves, is somewhere in the 60s, and about the same number of volunteers. The
Okay,
most frequently requested service by far is rides,
mhm,
shopping, but mostly medical appointments. And those will take people to Boston, to Concord, we'll take them to Fitchburg, Leominster, Worcester, all over the place. The one advantage, we actually have 3 prongs to transportation for seniors in Berlin. One is the COA van, which is not able to fulfill its obligations at this point because it doesn't have a driver, which is what we're working on. It has an excellent van, it'll take 10 people. It can fill, by design, it can take people anywhere in our area. If we had the van provided by the Worcester Regional Transit Authority, we would be limited in geographical service area to the border between us and Hudson. So that lets out Concord, that lets out Hudson, that lets out Marlboro. That's not too swift. Neshoba Neighbors fill some of that. This new Catch Connect service also fills that. When it's running properly, we've tried it twice. The first time sort of, We were sixth on the list, and when we called half an hour later, we were sixth on the list, and when we called 3/4 of an hour later, we were sixth on the list. And we thought that was not an auspicious beginning. The second time we did it, they showed up in 10 minutes. Excellent, took us over to that entertainment place in Marlboro. We just did it as an experiment. Went there for lunch, called them up, 10 minutes later, they were there, picked us up, took us home. That's excellent. It fills in that gap. It takes people from Berlin across the line to Marlboro Hospital. Excellent. Initially, one of the screwy things about it was they said they'd go to destinations. What does that mean? It needs to be more like a taxi service. I live here, I'm going there, you pick me up here, you take me there. When I want to go home, you pick me up where I am, take me home. And there was some horror story where somebody from Northbrook was taken shopping. Woohoo! They get to the entrance to Northbrook Village at Pleasant Street. Here we are, help you out of the car with your stuff, and your bags, and these are all seniors, your bags, I guess call up your friends and have them tote your bags down to your house. So I think that's been ironed out, and if it hasn't, we certainly will iron that out. So that's a viable form of transportation, but it's only between those three towns. We have a lot bigger area to cover. Based on, my experience as a driver from the Neshoba neighbors is that I take people, the longest one is up to, what the heck was it? Not Nashua, Nashua, New Hampshire, because somebody had a prosthetic appointment, and that's where I went. And that's a freebie, because Neshoba neighbors volunteers use their own cars, their own gas, their own time. There's no charge involved. That doesn't, just based on numbers, how many did you say in Berlin? 30
members.
30 members. And out of those, a large proportion of their requests are for rides. And of those, 2 medical appointments. But that's only a teeny slice of the total senior population in Berlin. If you could extrapolate from there, you'd say there's a lot more need for transporting people within the area that the Berlin van can take people. So the idea that we would slice into the funds available for hiring drivers, Melissa noted that we have some people who are volunteering. I'd volunteer, and I think some other board members would volunteer, but that's not the way that operation should be depended upon. To be dependable, you need to have somebody who's hired and they know what the rules are and they've been vetted and all this stuff. You go from there. So it needs to be up. It needs to be professionally operated. It needs to have people who are paid and are gung-ho. And we've had people like that in the past, but not in the past couple of years. And the reason it sounds like people aren't asking for the services is because they'd phone when things were not swift. They'd phone and, geez, we don't have a driver today, or the van's not operating today. So at some point, people eventually say, why am I bothering to call? I get no response. We want to have a response. We want to have drivers paid. We want to have the van operating. The van is perfectly operable. It's not old, very capable, 10 passengers. It can have 2 tie downs for handicap. It's got a ramp on the back. Everything you could want, except a driver. So you have some option for volunteers, but that shouldn't be what the service is based on, just volunteer stuff.
My initial question was sort of, it seems to me that one van cannot possibly cover, especially if you're talking about taking people really far out, you cannot possibly cover what you're covering with 60 volunteers in any way. You also are talking about a 10-person van being used as a taxi, which I'm not sure also doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I can see a 10-person van for a group, but I can't see it being used for a taxi, and I can't see it going to New Hampshire, because then you have the van basically out for one
Sure.
ride for the entire day.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not
I
quite seeing
think the
how
taxi
it
service was
works.
Catch Connect. He was talking about
Okay.
Catch Connect was supposed to be more of a
right.
taxi service is what
I
he
mean,
was saying, not our van.
I would love to see, like, with that personally, I would love to see like group activities with Let's set times where people can go over to the Northborough Senior Center or go for ice cream or all of those different things. I think that's a perfectly viable use for a 10-person van. If you need the handicap surfaces, then once again, I guess you have to take the 10-person van, but to use a 10-person van for a
One-off
that-
appointments is what you're.
it
kind of- yeah.
seems excessive.
I mean, I come from a bigger center, and they had 2 WRTA vans.
Mhm.
And they had a schedule and they followed the schedule and this is how it goes and they filled them all the time.
Mhm.
I would love to be able to provide those services here, eventually. But it's more, for me, it's just starting, it has sat for 6 months and I'm a little bit lost on exactly how to start it, to be honest, because when we put it out there, are people gonna call, if we set a schedule, is it gonna be harder to fill it if it's a set schedule? Is it gonna be easier? I don't know those things, to be honest. So I'm a little bit unaware of how it runs, but, yeah, I mean, I'd love to be able to take our 10-person and just load it with people. I mean, even bringing them to 19 Carter, if it's somewhere to get them out of the house,
Socialization.
yeah, I guess it's not. I don't know. I mean, I think if we have volunteers, I don't know if the question is really like, why do we need 19 hours or I don't know.
I think it's a field of dreams thing. If you run it, people will call, people will want the service. They see that it's doing what you say it's going to do. And it's, if you don't do that, then people think, it's the same old thing. I'm gonna waste my time calling them and the thing isn't even running. So we do need to get people, we need to have a budget for people to be paid. And the van is all set to go. I think it's a growing situation. So you start off and the more people see the thing around town, it's running, there are people in it. It's going to social events, it's going to medical appointments in conjunction with the Catch Connect, which does some of that. Catch Connect's also good because it takes anybody from Berlin, the Highland Commons, or Solomon Pond Mall. And that's their shopping stuff that would otherwise interfere with, say, a medical appointment. Medical appointments are a little tricky. Take somebody and you may have to wait for an hour, so the van's tied up for time there, waiting, and then time back. So I guess what I'm saying is we could use 5 more vans. Should I put that on?
I mean, I don't see how it can serve that purpose entirely for you because of the limitations of if you take somebody to an appointment that's an hour away and you're waiting for an hour and I don't see how it can serve that purpose well for you.
Realistically, what you should be doing is dropping off people and then picking them up.
Right.
So example is you go from, my previous was Clinton to Sterling to 2 stops in Leominster. And then they backtracked and picked up those same people. So they drive 40 minutes out, but they're 40 minutes back. Can we do that right now? No, because we don't have people riding the van. We don't know where they're going and what their appointments are and stuff like that. I think we could work up to that, but yeah, I wouldn't want just like one person going to Nashua and then coming back and be like, okay, I'm done for the day. Here's 2 hours. Like, that's it, And I think part of losing, in my opinion, the drivers is just that you're making one trip out and you're coming one trip back. You're getting 2 hours that day and they only picked up one person and one person back. It's, 90 minutes of driving. I don't know how far they went. I honestly couldn't find like the boundaries or anything, of exactly where they stopped it.
And
Yeah.
while I think it's wonderful to provide the service, you do have to look at, like, it doesn't make sense to, I mean, some of this you're looking at the numbers you look at and it's like $50 a ride.
Mhm.
Does it make sense? Or could we be finding a way to do this better? So it sounds like you are thinking about those types of things, which is great. I guess I'll just, Peg, I know you had a list over there, so.
Well, just to kind of piggyback on Lisa, how many rides will be needed to justify 19 hours a month? Because my concern is Scott needs a ride to the mall and I pick him up and then I don't have any other rides for the day. I am not happy with somebody sitting around for that time, nor do I want them to do any type of administrative work because that's for senior work off. So I would need to see an updated job description of what those people or person will do when there are no drivers.
Okay.
Or no riders rather.
If I could say something to that, that was just an idea that I threw out that would only be temporary, would not require an updated job description. That was just in the beginning, if somebody would be able to help with something while the van was just getting up and running. I wasn't proposing a different
Right,
job
but
description.
if they're proposing, 19, because in one of your meetings, it was, oh, this is a guaranteed 19-hour position. So of those 19 hours and I'm driving 3, what am I doing the other 16? And sitting around and waiting is not an acceptable answer.
I think there will be some waiting at the beginning. I don't know that there's a way to avoid that until it picks up.
And I buy the chicken and egg argument, and I
Mhm.
think the voters and saying they're willing to raise their taxes to try this out said that we should, the chicken and egg, we should start by hiring a driver. And I am equally dubious and skeptical that it makes sense. I don't think we should be in the transportation business at all. But I want to be, I want to take what happened at town meeting seriously. And I think you have sort of 9 months to figure something out because budget season will be next February and March. And, if for the last 6 months you had a driver sitting around for 18 hours a week and 1 hour a week driving, we'll be in the same position again, saying this is
Exactly.
a horrible thing to be in. But
Yeah.
I get that you can't, I get the chicken and egg. And I think the way out of it is that we have to hire a driver who, for their first couple of weeks, is likely to spend 90% of their time sitting around. I think in a perfect universe, you would find a good driver, you would know they're starting July 15th, and you would start advertising like mad that we have a driver starting July 15th and start filling those slots. I also was on FinCom when we first went down this path of having a van and thought that one of the reasons I liked us having the van or having something like that is that because it's a town program and a town-owned van, that all those silly regulations on what WMRT can do and what, Meals on Wheels can do and what others can do, we don't have to follow. But that does also mean that you end up with this, how far do you go for appointments? So their specialist is in Boston, their specialist in New York City, their specialist is in, New Orleans. Obviously you're not driving to New Orleans, but I mean, it's the other side of that question is just as difficult. It's like, yeah, Framingham's just that one more, but then Natick is just one more town after that. And then Waltham is just one, and then you're in Boston, and then you're in, right. I think I expect some experimentation in the next 9 months, and I expect some of those experiments are going to fail, and I am going to be okay with that because I think you only find the right combination by trying and failing a couple of times. Maybe you do, maybe even though WRT would do this, you decide that on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. you're going to do 3 stops in Berlin to pick up people who are just going to go to a grocery store, and you're going to give them an hour at the grocery store, and then you're going to take them all back. And because they know that every Tuesday at 9 a.m. they can go to the grocery store, they can plan their week around that. That you will every now and then decide that you have a bunch of seniors that want to go go-kart racing at a local go-kart track, and you're going to pick them up at 2 o'clock on Thursdays, and you're going to do a go-kart thing.
The hospital.
An in-law relative of mine, her senior group organized a 50-person bus tour of America, and they started in Texas and came all the way up and saw New York City and Washington DC and Boston and did a different, I forget, they saw Memphis on the way back.
Talking from the audience, please, because people online can't hear.
Sorry, the people guys get it. But there's difference out there. So I expect you to do some sort. I expect someone to fail. I'm hoping some succeed because if you do a bunch of experiments, and again, the driver next February is sitting around 18 to 19 hours a week doing nothing. There will be a problem trying to get support again.
Yeah, understood.
Have you started to look at some of the policies that are out there? Because they're kind of outdated. It talks about, well, we're going to, help you with your groceries. Well, now, does that mean that the driver has to be physically fit in some way to be able to do that? So I would probably recommend looking at the COA van policy and procedures. There's a couple of them that are really vague that says, oh, the driver will inspect the van. So does this mean I'm inspecting the van? looks good. Or
No,
is there
there's a
going,
check sheet.
all right, so there is, is it kept anywhere? Is it available so that all of a sudden? So I pick up the van from Scott and the windshield's cracked, but he tells me that the windshield wasn't cracked on his report.
It gets turned into the Council on Aging Director
Okay,
at the close of every.
but yeah,
Drive.
I would
It's probably just
suggest,
the one where you circle around and check everything.
Yeah, it's a
right?
so it's
Yeah.
horn, headlights, brake lights,
Yeah.
directionals, defrosters, windshield mirrors, interior lights. I mean, it's,
Okay.
I accidentally left this out of the packet, but I did bring it today just in case there were questions on that, but. Yeah, they do have a vehicle pre-inspection report and it does come back to me, signed off, and it's their time leaving, time returning, their starting mileage, ending mileage.
yeah, but I would
I
take.
mean,
a
we
look
can
at
take
those
off
and
donations because they're not supposed to accept cash, so that's.
And
Take,
then-
a-
and
take a
the
look
last
at those
driver-
because they're last dated 2019.
Mhm.
So they're.
Our last driver
vehicle.
did alert us to the potential need for some work on the brakes, so we took it over to Berlin Auto. Bingo, all in good shape.
We did have, we just had a COA board meeting and there are some updates that I had, that we did find, I mean, we're not gonna run it Monday through Friday, so we need to update that. And then the schedule itself, we were going to look at, because it does say Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I guess I did look at this, and I thought it ran similar to my previous Council on Aging, so I will absolutely take a look more deeply and see if there's anything to update. And then does that go back, what's the policy on that? Does it then just go back to you to then have them approve it? Or
In
does it go to
terms
my
of the
board first
schedule?
and then? No, it just,
Policy.
this whole form
Policy.
says that it was approved by the board. 2019, and then it was approved by the select board. So is it
So-
my board first still?
And
Okay.
then select board.
Okay,
And once you get it approved by your board, if you let us know, we'll put it on an upcoming agenda.
okay.
So regarding Friday, I know that the town offices are shut and I know that you want to help, one person at a time. But if you're closed on Friday and my appointment's on Friday and I need a ride and I can't get there and the other bus won't take me there, are we really helping the members of the community?
So I think of having a published schedule when I'm calling my doctor saying what appointments, I know the van's not available Friday and I say I can't do Fridays. That's sort of how I do it now. I'm in my office on Wednesdays. And so when I'm calling my doctor, I'm like, I really can't do Wednesdays because those tend to be booked from, and that means I sometimes have to wait a week or two more, but that's back to her argument that having a set schedule where people know ahead of
Mhm.
time that here are days when they're talking to their doctor, they could make that happen.
And sometimes it can't. I mean,
Right.
I'll be honest, if you had a surgery, they only do surgeries on Tuesday, your follow-up is on a Wednesday, sometimes we won't be able to accommodate something like that. But most of the time, it has been my experience that if you ask your doctor and you say, I'm only able to get here due to transportation, they'll work with you, on either the timing of it or the day of it.
So what is your marketing plan around this? Because I know unfortunately for a lot of COA events, people don't know that they're going on. So how do you market a van when messages for COA events don't get out to that population?
So I actually just, started really working with Northbrook Village too. And they, for the last event I just held, did a one call to all their residents, letting them know that there was an event, and I had 23 people come from Northbrook too. So I'd like to put that out there as well, have them do a one call. Northbrook one is a little bit more challenging, but I would stay in touch with them as well. See if they have the same capabilities. I don't know, they're two different property management companies, as you know, so, we talked about printing just little door hangers and sliding them under the doors, seeing if we could put them in the mailboxes. Putting them in, if we can, I need to talk to somebody, the bags of the food pantry was brought up to me. Seeing if I could put something in there. The church bulletin, we're trying all these avenues, obviously, I mean, not all of my friends have Facebook, so not everybody's gonna see it on Facebook. So I think just trying to put it out in as many places, the post office has a board, the general store has a board. And hopefully if, you know, like Bob said, if we can get it running, people will see it out and they'll say, oh, they're up and running again. Or, hey, I took the van, or, you know, it's to start, I would say it's just, we've got to kind of throw everything at them, paper and calls, and I'd love to do a mailing, but they're expensive.
There's 2 other over 55 communities too, so please
Yeah.
just don't restrict it to Northbrook 1 and 2. Cause
Yeah,
you're
but
leaving
in
out
case-
giant populations.
In the case of Northbrook 1 and 2, however, you have a much larger percentage of their populations who don't drive, who don't have their own cars.
Understandable, but if this is a COA van supporting people who are over the age of 60, then those 2 communities in Berlin are specifically for that age group. So
Sure.
just because I live here and I can drive, don't
They still
exclude
want
me from it.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they
And-
just don't want to drive that day.
Well, or
Perfect.
because they're going to a medical appointment, the procedure is one they shouldn't be driving afterwards.
Right, right.
And possibly too, with the new website coming on, subscription lists for email, so you can have an email list to punch out to and those types of things too.
And we don't use reverse 911, I don't think, enough for town announcements of things. Again, there's a town that for some reason in work, I've gotten on the list, and I think I get 2 or 3 a week. Of
Yeah,
like, you know,
which I think is
interesting, which is way too
overkill,
much and
but yeah,
overkill,
we
but I
could
think
do
there's something
more.
between we do 0 and, you
Yeah,
know, if we
'cause
did
I mean, if
10 a
they
year.
were like 6
communications.
months, you're- Yeah,
Yes.
Right.
I mean, my events are typically like I'm booked through September. I have one event in October already booked, so even if you did it the first of the month and did a one
Yeah.
thing of what was coming up for the whole month, which it's not something every day, so there's like 3 or 4 things that they'd have to know, but that
So,
would be an idea.
yeah, and if you wrote, the challenge with Code Red, is it's me. So it needs to be written up pretty much exactly as it needs to go out and very succinct. And if I can get that, I can push it out pretty quickly. So
Okay.
if you can, you know, we can work
Like
on
to
some
sit with you
language for
and-
that. Absolutely, I can get it out. I can do it from my phone.
Okay.
So,
Isn't there some thought that if you want to put information out about something, I think you have just said this, you can't do it once or twice, you have to hit it like 5, 6 times, and
Yeah.
then people begins to make an impression on people's minds.
I do also, and we do also have, I spoke at the beginning where Word documents in Excel, and so we have my senior center now, which is a place that tracks everything. So I do have a senior tax work-off person working on phone numbers, and if we're getting the email addresses and kind of connecting and doing data entry off of the Berlin street list from Eloise. And so with phone numbers and emails, we have constant contact, so I would be able to email all those people that have email addresses, and we can do just like the Northbrook Village 2 did for me. You do a 1 call, and just call everybody that has written the transportation, or you could do A through L, or, you know, split up so people aren't getting it all day, every day. But there are ways to do that once we have all the data in there. And unfortunately, it's been some data entry for the last 8 months now, trying to get that up.
Can I ask 2 questions?
Go for it.
Is there any doubt that seniors in Berlin do need transportation provided by the town? You sounded like you were doubtful.
I believe there are seniors who need transportation. It's the second half of that sentence I might be disagreeing with, whether that is a government responsibility to get people from point A to point B.
Okay, and what would be the alternative if not the government?
That you, your own support networks, nonprofits, churches. Again, I don't believe the government should do everything for every person. And so there are needs that people have, legitimate needs, desperate needs that people have that are not necessarily the job of government to solve, especially town government. Healthcare is a mess in this country. I don't think town government is going to solve the healthcare crisis.
Okay, and the second question is, suppose this thing flourished and we had all kinds of people requesting services from the town van, would you be at some point in the future open to considering adding another van if it turned out that there was this huge demand and one van wasn't cutting it?
I need
I
data.
think we need first
I
to
need
prove
more
that we can do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I mean, I don't have them sign up and say, yes, absolutely. I mean, we need to prove that.
Yeah, our track record is we don't do this very well.
Mhm.
We need to change that if we're gonna go forward. It would be great if we did, and it would be great if you were successful, but so far, we haven't really done this very well.
Mhm.
If I
there's a small part of me that thinks that we're pitting our van versus WRTA. You know, so are we recommending take our van? Especially if WRTA goes out this far, and now you determine based on whatever information you can gather that Berlin can also go out this far. So is it an either or? Is it in conjunction with?
I honestly am not comfortable speaking to that. I was not here when the WRTA grant was written, so I don't know why
Yeah, they,
it was, I.
are you
don't wanna
talking
speak
about
out
the
of turn.
Catch, the
Yeah,
Catch
the-
Connect
yeah.
program?
Yeah.
No, the WRTA providing the van.
That would be a
Opposed-
different
No, I
model.
think
Alright, so let's do
So,
Catch Connect. So are you having competition? Oh, I can take the Berlin van for $3 versus the Catch Connect for $2. Which one should I take? So I don't want to see competition because I don't want to see a program that we work to put in place fail
Mhm.
because of this. So
yeah, the Catch Connect goes Metro West. So I think when we talked about it, the idea would be this would be your Worcester service, or perhaps some other points that aren't covered by the Catch Connect, because the other option, the WRTA doesn't operate in Berlin because we have the van and they provide the funding. So there is another model you can use where WRTA provides the van. We still have to provide the staffing though, so
Exactly.
that's still an issue.
Yeah.
And they do all of the scheduling. So, but they do all the maintenance on the van, they replace the van when it's needs to be replaced. It's a model I've honestly seen that, in my opinion, it works better. I don't see that you lose a lot of control, but, you know, that's perhaps for a future discussion once we see if we can get this up and running and working. I genuinely believe there's a need. I think it just hasn't been done on a consistent enough basis with a set schedule to enable people to really grasp that it's there. I mean, philosophically, obviously, I understand your point, Scott, completely. Whether or not we should be doing it is a challenging discussion, and I can certainly understand people have varying viewpoints on that. But I certainly don't deny that there's a need for it. And I do, like you, Scott, want to be respectful of what town meeting did say, you know, and I think we're not going to have the data up front, you know, it's a challenge. And so I think Melissa's done a tremendous job of trying to get things up and running. And we've worked really well together. I want to, you know, continue to be supportive and see what we can make work here, you know, and meet those needs.
So do you put it and say this is a trial period for X amount of months? Because honestly, I can say this
Sure.
and I will continue to say it. I will give you like a grace period of a month of somebody maybe sitting around.
Right.
After that, absolutely not. I don't want to see tax money wasted on somebody sitting there for X amount of hours per week because there's not a need. So
Mhm.
again, it's very much chicken and egg.
Mhm.
But at the same time too, there's a fiscal responsibility where the voters said, hey, put this back on. You're spending my money. And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna be watching it and asking questions like a hawk.
Gabby,
I think that's fair. I mean, that's, you know, it is your money. It's Berlin's money.
I think the voters voted at town meeting for a year experiment, not a month experiment. You're not gonna know after a month.
I was gonna say 3 to 6.
And since budget season is, you know, again,
The corner.
around the corner, despite everything it feels all the time, but it gives some time for, I mean, if I had magic wands to wave, and I don't, I would, in some respects, advertise a 19-hour-a-week position sort of as quickly as you can get through the right pieces. And because the amount of time it takes from the day you actually get that posted and get application to interview, get someone in, it's going to be a couple months. And that gives you the time to work on those policies of, well, hopefully even before you hire, what hours are really going to be working. But I'd start getting on you know, again, beating the bushes for people who would do that, who would take appointments. And how far you're gonna go but I expect someone to be experiments. You could decide on day one you don't go to Framingham, but you discover that 8 of your people want to go to Framingham, so you're gonna add that in. You could decide your edge is Framingham, but no one's going that far, so you decide your edge is going to be Oxford. You know, and so I think, again, I get it advertised as soon as you can to get someone in as soon as you can so that we can get a good 6 months worth of data before we get to budget season. And, you know, where you could have the data to show that we've spent I don't know the number that was passed, I mean, $25,000 on a driver, and we've done 7 rides in 6 months. Or we spent $25,000 on a driver and we do 8 rides a day. You know, and I can't tell you right now, Bob, that like somewhere in there is a number where I think it needs to be enough. 1 hour, 1 drive a week clearly is not, you know, 50 rides a day clearly is enough to justify multiple vans. You're likely to fall somewhere between those two, and I couldn't tell you today where my line would go, but I'd at least be open to it.
Yeah.
As skeptical as I am about the whole program, I'd at least be open to having conversations.
And I mean, I think, to be honest, I'm on the same part of that, is if in budget season 9 months, we're not proving it, then yeah, let's talk about alternates and how we can prove, maybe we allow Neshoba neighbors to take more volunteers, or we help offset the cost of their memberships or something. I mean, but I would
Right,
like to see us try this.
right. And I expect it to be a mesh. I think Neshoba neighbors are gonna do some rides. I think the Connect are gonna do some rides. I think we're gonna be doing some rides. And that with that mesh, you'll get enough people covered that enough people can live in their homes for a little bit longer.
I think what you need to consider too is where we're gonna store the van, because obviously the Old Town barn is on our list of buildings that is just way too expensive to do anything with, and I think that's where the van is parked now, so depending.
It is not
upon-
housed there. It's actually, it's been outside for probably, I think, 2.5 months. I don't know
Yeah.
what caused it. There was some discussion, and Ken actually moved it for me, out of the old barn, and it's right outside the bays of the fire.
That was because,
Um,
we have Apple in there right now.
Oh, that's what it was. That's right.
With
No,
one,
the
Oh,
Old
I
Town
see.
barn,
Built Town Barn has,
not Town Hall, Town Barn.
right, okay.
They're in the town barn too?
They needed some, what was it, the staging space in the Old Town barn that they needed?
Oh.
Apple?
There was talk about that. I didn't know that.
Oh, they didn't go through with
I
it?
didn't know Apple did. I thought Asset was using. No.
That's what the Old Town barn, oh, they're at the new highway. Sorry, I was wrong. They're using the parking at the new highway.
All right.
So then I don't know.
Like that, so we don't.
Yeah.
Why was doing outside?
I don't know. Find that out. Is there a reason that it was always kept inside? Cause I'm thinking like our cruisers are outside. I mean, is there just
I
a
know school buses are,
concern
is
that
it
it
just
needs to
a,
be inside?
I think they were just looking for a place to park it.
Okay.
Right.
'Cause we have
Yeah, I
parking
think inside-
Here.
Well, sometimes just if you have a spare inside spot, why not put it inside?
So it.
But it might not have ever needed it. Since we had a dozen buildings we might not ever need or use, putting it inside is not necessarily a problem.
Okay, okay.
When its service flourishes, we were hoping to put a little addition right here, so you just walk out into the garage and hop in the van.
Get a little ahead of yourself.
Some-
No, I
I
think,
appreciate your enthusiasm. Your optimism, that's a wonderful thing.
I think your advertising is key and consistency is
Mhm.
key.
Yep.
You know, like we've discussed before. And, you know, one of the things we talked about, Melissa threw this out at the department head meeting and said, guys, you know, what do you guys think? You know, you've got folks that have worked for this town for 30 years. Where do people go? Where do they hear about things? What are the best ways to get it out? And Eric had some great ideas. Fred had some great ideas. So, you know, we're really trying to use our resources to figure out the best way. But I see we've got folks from 19 Carter here. Can they help get the word out? You know, I think we can use our network better than perhaps we have, you know, previously.
Mhm.
Fortunately, unfortunately, I think the board that sits behind you is very quantitative based in numbers and not stories of,
Sure.
oh, we could help Sally and bring her up to the market basket. It's how many Sallys, how often?
Mhm.
So when you do come back.
Yeah.
Gotta have lots of numbers, at least for
You
me.
got
I can't speak for my cohorts.
Well, and I think that's why, you know, my senior center is important too. You know, I keep talking about, that's exactly it. That's why I wanted it the day I started. It's, you want to know how many riders I've had? You go, here you go. And then it's right there. It's who's taking the van, where they going? It's all in one place. Like I said, it's kind of all over the map from previous. So it's been hard to kind of get you numbers. But hopefully that will change and we will be able to get more riders on there. So if people need a ride, please call me.
Call anybody, we'll get you to Melissa. We'll send you in the right direction. Call the town office.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I
Got
think
it.
there's things that we could tighten up. I do think policies and procedures, you know, there's definitely things to look at.
Job description.
Yeah, the job description. But yeah, that's I thank you for
Like
your
I said,
time. Yeah.
all
Good
right.
luck.
I
There's
think
like-
we've done enough.
Yeah, I've beaten this enough, so I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Hopefully we helped
Appreciate
give them some direction. Definitely give us more things to do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see, back to the agenda that I've not closed this time.
Line item.
Line item transfers.
Get over to that. We have two line item transfers that were approved by the FinCom on last Wednesday when they met, excuse me. Sorry, I didn't have that one open yet. So we have one for Medicare. And it is transferring $2,000 out of the excess in Chapter 30B health insurance that we have, that we won't have going forward because, as you've astutely pointed out, Scott, we've had excess in the past couple of years, so we cut that back significantly in the FY26 budget. And the second is a request to move $7,500 to Town Admin Consulting out of the Chapter 32B health insurance to assist with the FY25 recon in the treasurer and accounting office, so we can make sure we stay on track and get fully caught up.
Is there discussions on these?
June signed off on them, I trust them.
Yeah, and
June we
I
trust.
debated putting this on the consent, but because it shows potentially some over and underspending in some items, I thought it was worthy of sort of calling out. I might, if I put them on the consent item, actually make them each individual line, so it is a transfer from X to Y. But is there a motion to approve these? Any more discussions?
Motion to approve.
Seconded, and can we please update this form?
What is again on the form?
Action of the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, that's an old form.
I know it's an old form. so
June's
can we
taking
give that
notes.
up? Thank you, Ms. June.
Thank you, June.
And
Uh,
up at the top too.
if there's no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Potential fall town meeting warrant articles.
Would you like me to just walk through them really quickly or?
Yeah, and then I have some that I think are missing.
I tried to split them into sort of three sections. The first would be financial articles. Depending on how our conversation goes later on this evening, we will be having a discussion about a potential intermunicipal regional inspectional services. So if that would be the case, we would need to do a transfer of funds there. We've also had discussions about potentially setting some free cash for new voting booths. There's also been discussion about, do we get ticket books for the police department? I know Board of Health brought forward potential funding for landfill studies. And this one was lingering for a while. The town meeting did approve 2 LED signs in town. They approved one for the town center as well as one for the school.
Mhm.
And so that's been hanging out. Do
Yeah.
you want to use free cash to build that
I
sign?
think that was just done just in case we wanted to someday
Yeah.
build a sign. I don't think there was there's no group asking for a sign. And so I think that is just there, just in case someone in the future wants to build an LED sign. Since we're doing the bylaws anyway, to at least let the town have one.
It makes sense. Since it was
Yep.
like sticking around, I
Yep.
wanted to clarify on that.
I do think at some time it would be wonderful to replace the yellow sign with an actual.
Yeah. I think some of it is the bigger discussion is where,
Mhm.
like, where is their town-owned land that makes sense to put it on?
It's in any town.
Because I don't know if I want to have any more entanglements between us and
No,
No, it's not
town
going.
property owners. That's,
well, I mean, think about it. If you come from Clinton, it's by the old
the Rudolph building.
Rudolph building. And if you're coming from Hudson, no, that's a bad spot. 'cause
Yeah.
It's on the corner of Pleasant.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, we distract drivers that are
Yep.
coming from Pleasant on
Yeah.
62. Any CPA articles?
I'm not aware of any, but I just put
Yep.
CPA on, as I put planning board bylaws on,
Yep.
because we can give them the opportunity since we have the meeting.
Yep.
Typically, they only do them in
November.
Yes.
This,
spring.
yeah, in the spring for CPA.
The first year, I think the first fall I was here, there was talk about putting the community garden fence earlier. That's the only one I've ever heard about
Yeah.
that they talked about doing offsite.
Sometimes there's a small one that if you could do it in the spring, it makes sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, so there could be from those. And then it looks like a fun list of bylaw ones.
It does. So amending the town meeting bylaw, I've called some of the comments together that the board has had, which is discussion of a time limit on town meeting comments, striking the time for annual town meeting from the bylaw altogether, meaning we
Right.
don't have to hold it at a set time. That can be set by the select board. And perhaps require a vote to continue the meeting at 10 PM instead of 11 PM. Then there's been discussion about amending the personnel bylaw to address some minor inconsistencies between the TA bylaw, the personnel bylaw, and the employee handbook. There's also some language that could be clarified in the town administrator bylaw. That's a little more challenging, obviously, because that requires special legislation, but I think if we can at least all bring them into alignment, that would be helpful. This sort of was sparked from Town Labor Council saying that when I do have to reach out to them for interpretation on the TA bylaw, there are some things that they could recommend if we were in the business of updating it to make it consistent. So I am going to ask them what those specific items were that contradict. We could amend the revolving fund bylaw to create a fund for earthwork permit fees. Now that earthwork bylaw has been approved by town meeting, it still does require AG approval, but we could set that up in anticipation of. And right now, we can only spend $40,000 a year from the town hall revolving fund, but we just took in 60 for a project. So I would recommend that we increase that as well. And then I don't know who brought this one to my attention, but somebody at one point brought up amending the board and committee bylaw to allow board members to report a position as vacant if someone misses more than 3 meetings. I did have this bylaw in my previous community. It is a challenge sometimes if someone stops coming and you have to wait, or you don't want to specifically have the select board unappoint them, perhaps. This is a bit of a faster process. They can report the position as vacant to the town clerk and then it can be refilled. And then the only other 2 were the discussion about putting the Legion Hall disposition back on to the Housing Trust. And as Lisa pointed out, that the majority vote of 2/3 required for land transfers is for any land transfers, not just for the Housing Trust. So thank you for that, Lisa.
I think we should be prepared for, I'd love to think that for fall town meeting, we're prepared potentially for a school agreement to change. Maybe if not all of it, at least some pieces of it.
Boylston, just for the audience,
Right.
has indicated they are willing to enter into negotiations. So that is a great step. So we'll be trying to schedule a meeting soon.
And I was serious in the spring that I think a article for the roof of Berlin Memorial School would make sense, because I think when they put that $600,000 on the, or $300,000 on the budget for next year, it's just gonna look like a giant increase that might not really be there or mask other increases. And so I think we need to take care of that building. We at least need to discuss it. We need to get some good quotes. And I think the school could help us put that together. And I think they would appreciate that too.
I know the Energy Committee wants to put in a Green Communities grant application in phases for the roof. So I think I can start by reaching out to Tim and
Yep.
kind of see what his thoughts are on
Yep.
how to proceed there.
Yeah, my general goal is that sometimes I think some school capital items might be better in fall than in spring. So we can really separate the discussion of operating increases versus capital. And capital numbers tend to go up and down a lot. And so if we can sort of take some of that out of the May town meeting so that we can have more clear conversations about budgets and what's going up or down.
Makes sense.
I think this is a great starting list. If we just voted for a November 1, that probably means early October, we're opening, September, we're opening the warrant and closing the warrant sometime in September, with October really being where we want to have
Yep.
all the I's started dotting and T's crossed so we can print and mail by mid-October.
I did not map out a calendar just because I wanted to make sure that you were okay with November 17th,
Yeah,
but
makes
now
sense.
I will.
Yep.
And just so you know, that November 17th date, I discussed that with the town clerk's office. And I may not have heard back from the moderator, but I did reach out. So
And the schools you've talked to.
I have not yet talked to the schools. So that's on my agenda. I just made a note to
Yeah.
make sure that the building obviously is
Yep.
available.
There are other items people are thinking of? I mean, this is not your last opportunity, but this is anything significant
No,
that you
it's
were
early.
thinking out there. I think it's a good starting list, and I expected us to have this on the agenda several more times throughout the summer to start tweaking, put numbers, put in order,
Mhm.
figure out which one of these are real and not. And police tickets really, they're still paper. Like if I get stopped for speeding, I get a piece of paper.
Or we have to
That-
do that 21D disposition, like, well, now they have the printers in the cars
Okay.
that print out,
Okay.
they actually print it out digitally, like
Right.
how it's supposed to be. So
Right,
this
right,
would
right.
be for non-criminal disposition, like
Right,
we were
but
talking
If
about.
they can print it out in the car, can't they print it out in the car when it's? Like, I mean, go to a police car, enter it, print it out, and then hand it to the person? I just $3,000 for a piece of paper that I could put on a photocopier and make.
I agree, because you have to make one for every officer.
Right, but they have printers in all the cars.
I'll talk to Eric.
It's a $3,000 paper book that I can photocopy.
Right, right.
And just the idea that they're handing out tickets the same way they did 75 years ago, but that's a. That we've advanced beyond cardboard paper, we should be on to the next step beyond. I think that's good. Yes,
Probably master.
I heard an O from the side, yes.
Cause the thought got lonely and left and then it came back. Do you think by this time, and here's wishful thinking, that our Massachusetts government will moving us from 3 to 5? Or do we want to
Oh,
just think?
I think
It's
we're at
May.
least a year out, if not
Oh,
longer.
come on. Look at Lisa now.
Good legislators.
Can't we not how it works?
We have good legislators.
We have good legislators, but it's not
We don't have
not
all of them.
them
Right,
We're the
that
government.
are making the
moves.
choice as to when those things are
Yeah.
heard and when they
Okay.
go to committee
Yep.
and those things are taking time.
Okay,
because we have a
They're
all right.
state that likes telling towns what they can and can't do on a micro level.
And that if missed more than 3 meetings, obviously that does not include, I'm going on vacation, I'm going on vacation. It's
Well, yeah,
last minute, sorry, I'm not making it.
Well, but I also think we'll have to put parameters on, so it's not like over a 3-year term of select board, if you miss 3,
meetings,
you know.
right.
It's,
We'll have to go.
Kristen has one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
So-
it's can, it's
and
not
that must.
shall or must, and
Yeah.
it's at the purview of the chair.
But I think it's similar to the recall bylaw in
Right.
that it gives mechanisms if you need
To
them.
do so.
Right.
Where is that? I know that's not on the agenda. Never mind, I didn't ask.
You can ask during questions, Deanna.
Okay, I'm gonna write it down because
It's floating around the.
Although, since it's on my list too, but I'll let you ask.
No, you ask. I already have some.
So I think we're ready for the next agenda item. Going to talk about town administrator goals. That you have written up a draft of based on our earlier conversations.
I have, and most of them should look familiar because we have a lot of multi-year projects going on. The newest ones to be added are now that we have partial funding for South Street Bridge reconstruction. I have added that on there. And we need to make a plan to utilize the opioid settlement funding that we have received approximately $47,500 of. And I started to have a conversation with the Board of Health and Victoria when she was here and EMS. Chief McQuillan has some really interesting ideas around how we might be able to use this and tailor it to the local community. So I'd like to, use his expertise as well as the Board of Health and put together something that really works for the needs that are here. Because they've offered, Neshoba Regional Boards of Health has said, you can give us your money and then we'll tell you what we're going to spend it on. And I like the idea of keeping that more hyper local. I don't know if you want me to go through them or if you have any you'd like to add or
No, I'd
discuss.
like to get comments from the rest of the board on them. What seems to have been lost over the last year or two is there used to be a column on this, because they are multiple year things.
Yeah.
Is sort of what part of that multi-year thing we expect to do in the current year.
Okay,
I think as much to protect you from a radical change of the board, which is unlikely to happen, but that some of these we're expecting to happen over years, and again, the complete streets, we're not going to have a whole new town center in 10 months from now.
Yeah.
And so what is the sort of our expectation and yours and how far that gets? I'm going to stop for a moment, let other people add to you about the things to.
Well, there was one, and I don't know if it's, and I think it's important because I look at other towns' websites and I don't see it on Berlin. But would love to see a calendar of events and I don't want, Dee, I don't want this to turn into a you're doing it. But, and I know you can say, oh, you can go out to My Town Government and find out when meetings are, but things like Melissa was doing. Here's an ice cream event. No one knows about it. Whap it on a calendar. Oh, it's time to get rabies for your dogs. Whap it on a calendar. So month by month, people can go and see what's going on and where you meet with the department heads. If Richard's doing something, if Board of Health is doing something and they do the rabies clinic, put that out there for more communication to try and involve the town.
So in my experience, that was always managed through the town clerk's office. People would send information to the town clerk's office and they would manage the calendar because otherwise it's us.
Right.
Which essentially means it's D, and I don't want to give that.
And
to
I
you.
don't want it to be, and I don't want it to be D.
And I think at goal setting, we're not coming up with a solution. I think we're coming up and it hit one of the things that I struggle with figuring out how to define, but how to increase civic involvement and engagement everywhere from, you know, the turnout at the meetings to volunteers on committees. I mean, I think we'd like to spend some time looking at some of these processes and finding something better. You know, we have a communication process out there that doesn't always work. You know, we have people who sometimes say they apply for positions and I don't know even where they're sending it, that it doesn't seem to get to the final thing. We have people who want to volunteer and we have openings on committees that we don't seem to match well. Again, I don't have the solutions. I don't have the great, but something that just, but we have, again, elections that no one, you know, but we have more vacant positions than we have contested races. And so how do we start sort of involving some of that so that there is more engagement at the town level? And I wish I could describe that better, especially what I think we can do in the next 10 months.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think this is a common problem that a lot of communities face. I'm hoping the website will help. I think the monthly Powder House News hopefully is helping, and we could advertise through there. I think there's some things that we can definitely do to improve it, but it is a challenge. You know, you hear like, oh, I didn't know about that.
Yep.
And you're like, but I put it in 4 different places. I don't know where else to put it. So it's tough, but yes, I can do some research and see what other towns are doing. And we can go from there.
And the only thing I had, and I think this has been sort of a discussion before, is maybe just investigating, sort of streamlining the use of internal software packages. Like, I don't think Vadar connects. Our permitting software only works for the permits there. Dog licenses are in a void and people can't get that information. There's sort of information doesn't interconnect as well maybe as it should, and it seems like software solutions might be possible. I don't want to like say let's get them, but maybe starting to investigate, you know, do we really want to stay on a Google platform, or would it make more sense to switch to Microsoft so that everything is consistent, and so that, you know, maybe a better online payment system, because that seems to be sort of a generalized issue, the way that Unipay works, or Unibank. I don't know if that's even possible, but sort of just that, how do we streamline our processes so that both the public and internally we are more efficient?
I love that, actually. That's a great goal.
I know that you have demo old fire station rescue buildings, but I think, you know, it just needs to be on here that we have several other buildings that we need to decide what to do. And I think that we can work with them in tandem. While the RFP is whizzing around for those 2 buildings, you know, we pluck off another one and start to talk about it. But I just don't want to limit it to demo old fire station and rescue buildings when there are other ones.
I thought much of that fell under facility plan implementation.
Does
because of
it?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
in my brain it did.
That was
I mean,
my
we could call it
thinking.
out.
I can spell it out a little bit more clearly, because I'm hoping that we'll have some good recommendations too on, you know, where it actually makes sense to invest and where it doesn't, which will help drive our decisions on buildings to keep as well from the Energy Fellows work. He's phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping several of these are not giant time sinks. I mean, the second floor renovation is sort of has a nice glide path. It definitely takes some stuff. I even think the radio projects have a nice glide path already and are not sort of a constant fighting of inertia. And so I think with a couple of those additions, it's actually a decent list. And then we do agenda setting. You and I should just refer to it on a regular basis to make sure that like
That they're moving.
that they're moving, but that as a select board, we're not like missing out on, well, we should be discussing it. We should be adding stuff there. Here's the barrier getting it going forward. And there's things that we might be able to do. Or gosh forbid, I miss a vote at a time that delays us getting something done.
And also maybe just the recommendations of putting our heads together too, because when it comes to like the IT software, I mean, I know standard municipal software, but we could think outside the box too, and it would be helpful for somebody with more of a tech background to, you know, throw out ideas.
Is there any, you know, technical assistance grant or something we can get to look at those types of things, or
Community
does such a thing exist?
There
Yeah.
have been IT grants that have come across that we.
It's a good
Yeah,
idea.
between Mass Municipal and CMRPC and some of those, you're right. There'd be other people who've looked at some of these things.
To just have somebody sort of review where improvements could be made and not entirely put that on you, but like if we could get a grant to have somebody in to look at things.
And I know tonight that we're gonna look at the annual town report and external communication policies, but do we put anything on there about a cadence that, you know, by the end of next year, we will have, or Kristen will be, you know, charged with revising 50% of the policies or something, because there's just so many. If we don't have a number to shoot for, those are gonna be an easy
Right, yeah.
next week, and we'll never get
I
there.
mean, it's 8:30. I'm already looking, going, what can you do next week?
You built this
I
agenda,
did it.
so you know.
Yep.
Mhm.
Is there, I mean, is there a cycle where you could divide them and say, we're gonna go over them every X number of years and then divide how many you need per year?
Or maybe like, look how they're broken down in as Scott, I
Mhm.
think said, or you said earlier, what are the more important ones that need to kick to the front, and then
Yeah. 'Cause
other
you
ones
didn't-
slide
you-
in.
You didn't like my way of doing it. You put them in a pile and you just go out the pile and work your way through, because you could spend months just figuring out which the most important ones. And by then you've lost 2 months of actually getting 6 or 7 of them done.
I like the idea of having some on every
Yeah.
agenda when
Yeah.
possible. If it's like a super crazy agenda, maybe not, but generally having them.
But it also means that on slower
These are
agendas, we might
more
add. more.
complicated than
Yeah,
others,
yeah.
like the two that are
Yeah.
on here, these are like,
Right, easy
yeah,
ones,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, knowing the sort of the cycle of like, I know how we do the master plan, we
Yeah.
do these this year, we do
Yeah.
these this
Yeah.
year.
I think part of it too will be me, I need to just capture the universe of what's out there, because there's the physical binder, and then I need to cross check it with the online, like Margaret has a folder of,
Where they matched at one point,
okay, so.
because the binder came from printing those out and
Correct.
organizing.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that is in theory,
But-
isn't it? It's not in reality.
Right, because, well, at least since I started, I initially wasn't aware of the binder, and then I found it in my own, oh, what is this? And I went, oh my goodness, that's really helpful. And then I started the policies that we've done that are new are not added into the physical. I have an electronic folder for them, so. Well, we can get what the universe is and then kind of map out how much can get done.
Do you have enough marking for goals? I think at the next meeting, we'll have a copy that we can vote on,
I can do that, that works.
maybe as a consent item.
You could also set up one meeting where we hit a bunch of them.
Right.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we do an off-cycle meeting and it's just,
Well, or again, we have slower meetings where we can
Yeah.
pound out a bunch of that are not super controversial or don't need any changes, or some we want to rezone.
Yeah.
And we've canceled meetings. Sometimes we've not had
I know,
a lot to do. We're like, oh, we could push it into all one meeting. We just don't do that as often, and we get a few more policies.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about regional inspectional services?
So back when we were going through the budget process in the spring, at the board's recommendation, I had reached out to CMRPC. They are doing a lot with regional services now and trying to connect communities, and they connected me with Sterling, West Boylston, and Boylston, who have an intermunicipal agreement right now for basically a building commissioner and local inspector combined services. And I've met with them twice now, the group, and I think they've got a great program. They're willing to expand and add us in. It would mean that we would have a local inspector, certified local inspector physically here 4 days, not all full days necessarily, maybe some full, some part-time, but definitely somebody physically in office every day that can answer walk-in questions during certain hours. The one thing that was a little bit of a catch was we would have to provide a vehicle. So I did work that out. Eric does have, Chief Shartner has a 2021 that is coming off cycle that he can hold on to, and we can actually repurpose as an inspectional services vehicle. And I know that's a cost, but you're gonna like it when I tell you that this will save $25,000 a year.
Why?
Because the cost is 75,000 and right now the salary line item is $100,000. So the other question is obviously Richard's timing of when the building inspector is ready to retire, because he has indicated, and actually he has tried to retire several times. We had a good conversation last week and he is prepared to retire at the end of March. And I did speak with Sterling and they think that that timing would work well for coming into the regional agreement then. So I just wanted, this is obviously a preliminary discussion. I have not committed to anything, but I wanted to gauge the board's interest in possibly continuing these conversations.
I like it. It's some of the things that I was trying to get us to.
I'm a huge fan of regional services.
Okay,
I'm
Why
from the
not?
Midwest, that's what we do.
Yeah. Yep.
I like that.
You
Well-
fence view and wrangle cows.
They do it a lot more too, like in New Hampshire. I've been learning just from conversations with Chief Mike and they do it well. And so I think we're doing it better here now than we used to, which helps. So I will continue
That's the
to
mother invention.
work
Mhm.
on that and explore that option if that works for the board. And I will ask the chief to hang on to the car.
And then back to policies, revised annual town report and external communication policies.
So I did look, the annual town report policy was just a formatting. I took the format essentially that Lisa had put forward because I really liked it. I did want to add the town seal because I always feel like the town seal should be on policies and maybe that's just my old school way. And did a little bit of,
Do you want to have to
changing.
do that to every single one of these though?
well, I would use this as a template and
Okay.
just modify because I think in every one, what I would do is take an old one that has purpose, policy statement, procedures, and then fill in the format. But I am totally open to changing the format, modifying it. You know, obviously it's the board's policy, so whatever, you know, works best for you all. But I liked the version history at the bottom, the bylaw references. I thought that the, you know, meat of it was really well organized and basically the annual town report policy didn't need any changes. We had already removed the reference to having to mail the annual town report. So this was just a formatting thing. So I don't know if you have any comments on the formatting.
I thought the formatting was fine. The next review, I don't know if I want to necessarily burden the poor people in January in 2027, especially since there's a chance one of them is me. I don't know if that's necessarily as key. I think that might be another policy that just says we do this section these days as opposed to actually putting on each one of these. But that's just in the level of things I care about. It's a neat thing, but I'm not dying on that hill. And because you just did formatting changes, we're just gonna keep it at version 1.1.
Yeah, start there.
No, well, I was gonna keep it there because nothing actually changed verbiage.
Right.
Wise, if you will. But I could make it 1.2 and just say reformatted.
That's something strange. Oh, there.
But I don't actually need a
Yep.
vote on this by
Right,
the
because
board, so
if we're not changing it,
Mhm.
I'm fine with the layout.
how did the other board members feel about removing the update date? Or just creating a policy?
I think I'd like to see at least a
Yeah.
year on there, if we
Yeah.
could, just
A year?
Because I
Yeah.
think you need a. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the correct one, but you need a reminder of when
Yep.
it's due.
Mhm.
So
Okay,
So change the next review to a year, just take the month out.
yeah,
Cause then you can start putting these on a tickler email list somewhere, so the message just is set to go out, you have future dated, out it goes, done.
I also like the idea of giving them a number, so I had left that in there to figure out what we want to do, and
Yep.
he had some great ideas about like a logical order to put these in and to tab them out in a Adobe document, so I left a spot
Yep.
for that as well. So that's that one. The other one, I did make some verbiage changes. All I really did was update the methods of communication section to make sure that they were accurate. Some of them were outdated and had changed, like the Powder House News said contact COA. The Code Red system said contact Chief Galvin. Nothing substantive, just basically updating that section for the appropriate places to contact.
And again, not to be picky, but are we still gonna use select men?
Where does it say select?
Cause it's
that's
town,
that's one of the various email addresses.
we need,
So
how
we
many
don't-
various ones do we need?
That's the one that comes to the office that was used by both Peggy Sardell and Mary, so a lot of people know that one, that's the challenge, but now it goes to D.
Gets forwarded to my email.
Right,
So
you
it's a-
could, you
it's
could
a
also do,
rule.
you could also do it as an alias, and so you could create a select board, which I know is a distribution
Yes.
list, and so we have to figure out how to separate the two of them, but when we do name changes at work, the old one still exists in the background, so someone uses it, it still gets to the right place.
It
but-
is, it usually does it.
Yeah.
Okay,
You have to make changes.
would you want me to change that then to the D, like D Green at Town of Berlin?
No, because I don't want a policy that names a person, so right, it still has to be Ryan, so I think it's I don't know, conversation is a weird one, but since select board at Town of Berlin goes to the three of us, right?
Select dashboard, yep.
Select dashboard,
Mhm.
but that if you had select dashboard and select board as two, that's going to get people to confuse.
select board
confusing.
office.
Yeah,
Yes, like-
or SB
or-
office or
Oh, so
something.
Select board office, again, once you're in an address book, people are not typing it 800
Mm-mm.
times, and
You're just gonna put it in once.
I'm not just, my hatred of acronyms. And so select board office. And there's no someone's gonna be like, why did you do select board office?
I
And
know.
they're like,
it
oh,
should be called
because it was
something else.
9:15 and
Like
it was 110 in the room.
This, is that, I mean, I don't know if that's amenable, but it's shorter.
And the
Yeah,
line
And it
and
won't
again,
get someone
sleep in.
confused with typing select.
I was just gonna say, when you start to type select, it's gonna
It
bring up the old
automatically
one, but
does
that's be
too.
put in, so let's do that.
That's fine too.
Sure.
Okay.
My
No
water
more-
bottle
no more
empty.
select-
I noticed that you're just
You
like,
could really go for it and go SBTA office. But I think.
don't
it's
make
just
them
confusing
fancy,
things.
just
I
make
know.
them so people can find them.
You got it.
Also just be office at Town of Berlin.
Yeah, and then that when this goes out on the web, it needs to have everything linked.
Yes.
Right,
Like my town government isn't a link.
Well, that's where we can test it, is that we'll just all get in there
Oh.
and see and track. the
Yeah, sorry,
bounces
some of them
and-
I didn't
Yeah.
hit
That's
space,
just-
and so they
that's just
didn't.
Yeah.
nitpicky stuff, but that needs to be.
see, we have 11 places we can send things when we want to announce it.
Does that refer back to your, I sent an email and I don't know really where it went or to whom
Yeah.
it went to?
No, it doesn't have that one, and there are things we use that aren't in the list, and I don't know how to list them, because we sometimes put things in the tax bills. We sometimes put announcements when we do
Blinky sign.
the blinky signs on the list. The
Census?
census,
Mm,
and we can always put something with the town report, we could always put
Mhm.
something with the warrants that go out to meet public town meetings.
What if we added official town mailings, and as an example, we
Yeah.
gave tax
Yeah.
bill, census?
And some of the town are time sensitive, if you're doing an announcement of a select board information session in October, you're not putting it in the April census, You could,
Would also add,
for us to plan ahead.
could add a sort of catch-all that says, or any other method approved by
Yeah.
the select board.
Well, the purpose of the thing that when we created this was that people ask, like, and so, where do you send things? I wanted a list to be able to point to. I also, when we were saying, hey, we want to publicize something, instead of each time coming up with a list, just say, use this list. Because I think what was happening is some announcements would go some places and some announcements would go to others, and just having a list. And so I don't think this prevents people from doing something else. If it's appropriate for the event to do an ad, in the Telegram and Gazette, or fly a plane with a banner after it, I think you can do that. I think this is designed to be helpful, not restrictive.
So why don't I just update a
Yep.
couple of those things and put it back on for the 7th?
Yep.
And those are the only two that I had.
G, consideration of town's right of first refusal on 8 Car Road.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. We were contacted by an attorney because there was a title report done on 8 Car Road. I assume that someone's attempting to sell the property. And it was in chapter land at one point for agricultural purposes. That was released by the Board of Assessors, but they never actually had it come to the select board for the right of first refusal. So anytime you take land out of chapter land, the select board has the right to buy it basically for whatever the highest price is, match the highest price. So this is really just an administrative correction, but because it's a little weird, didn't want to put on the consent agenda. So I had an opportunity to explain what it was. So we're really just correcting something administratively. Because I assume you don't actually want to purchase it and now you really can't. So, yeah.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. That brings us to select board comments and questions and updates. Do you want to go first, Lisa? Or would you please go first, Lisa?
Let's see. I went to the first time select board training.
Yep.
And came back with the consent agenda. I probably have a few other things I can bring up at some time, but I don't like to hit you with a ton at once. I also went to the spring forum for the housing trust. Probably one of the most interesting things out of that was the fact that the research that they had done that was presented was there is no relation between number of housing units and school enrollment.
Yeah.
It is
I
a
saw that graph.
wacky scatter plot.
Yep.
Mhm.
There's no real
It
correlation
is,
between those.
there
two
is a
numbers.
correlation between number of bedrooms and school enrollment, but not number of units.
It'll be interesting because that usually comes up in an argument about,
That's
oh, there's
definitely-
85,000
Did I send
houses
that
for
over?
sale.
I
Yeah.
can send that over to you because I mean, it is,
I might have gotten
Oh, my.
the housing trust.
I emailed it out to the planning board, the select board, the FinCom.
Okay. Are you sure?
because
Are you sure?
No, I know that I deleted like my email at one time.
Did you do it again?
No, I
Because
didn't do it again, and I figured out how I deleted, how I got myself off that, because
You-
it like
you
random
blocked it?
things that come in that say, do you want to unsubscribe? And I went, yep. Whoop, and it
I took it.
shut everything off.
Right, because all the distribution was saw, but unsubscribe button.
Yep.
sent it on the 20th.
Nada. I got SWAT. Diddly.
Okay, we
You
got.
could resend that.
I
page.
absolutely,
Lovely.
and if we can check that out again to make sure that you're not having an issue with the list, D.
Oh, I've
check
been
with
getting
CMB.
lots of other emails, so
Okay,
I'm not worried.
with all the select board like BCC'd on them, or,
Yeah,
okay.
Other thing, good.
No.
Ceiling pegs question, because it's on my list too.
you may have.
The Maytown meeting bylaws that the state has to approve. Any updates on any of those?
In process.
And that's the Attorney General's office, not anything the legislature can do, right?
The recall
Well-
bylaw is different, but
Okay,
It is still in
But-
process, I checked.
but the recall bylaw is not from May, it is from last fall.
that's correct. Sorry, I was thinking outstanding ones in
Right.
general.
But like the appointing of, constable and appointing of title tax.
They've been submitted. We did get confirmation from James about
James.
2 weeks ago, maybe,
About them.
that they have been submitted to the AG's office.
I
So as soon
wouldn't-
as we know, I will forward it on.
I wouldn't expect anything until,
All,
yeah, late fall or even winter, like, I remember like some of those coming like December.
Makes sense.
The historical has reached out to me because they're looking at potentially changing some of their times. I probably going to continue to be at some point the representative there because their meetings currently are at 10 a.m. on Fridays that make it hard for me to get to. I appreciate the fact they're thinking of my schedule because I plan on getting back to them and seeing if we can find a time where it's like late afternoon, sort of after I'm done my day, but that they're not, meeting late into the evening ever.
so I had the chance to go to Toronto and went to the Civil Action Project. I just want to shout out to Mary Porter, because she worked with them to get, the juniors enrolled for voting. And they put a presentation on it, so, well done, Mary Porter, to talk to those kids. Concom, the biggest news out of them is that the removal of the dam for Bonazzoli is chugging along. It's slow and painful, but they're moving, and I didn't know that river somehow connects into the Atlantic Ocean, which was kind of
Mhm.
cool. She was doing like the whole path out. But it's gonna take some time, and thankfully they have funding, because just, I think the removal of the dam alone is like 1.8 million as of today. Who knows what that will be? There will be some staging somewhere on Pleasant Street as they bring in equipment to keep moving out. And they found a granite rock that listed 1905, which they thought was the dam, but actually the dam dates back to like 1700. So they will probably keep that little piece of granite. Rec. A few weeks ago, Felicia came and we kind of approved the bleachers can stay up on several conditions. Those conditions have not been met. I had reached out to her and asked her if she was able to get a letter from Grace Church in regard to the donation of the benches. Not yet. I had asked James Holyoke help me, where he mentioned that there had been discussions with Fred for some type of stone dust that was supposed to go into the bleachers. Has not been done. And regarding the benches, where Mr. Hanks sat here and said that they need to be staked down, whatever they use have not been ordered. So do we want to give them a time limit? Do we want to say, don't worry about it, get to it? I mean, we put conditions on the approval of those benches for those 3 items.
I did reach out about that as well. So the first thing that would be helpful is if we could please ask rec to respond to emails from our office, because they won't. And I would really appreciate if they would. And I think it would make sense to give a time period. And I appreciate you helping out with getting that information flowing, but they are a board that is appointed by the select board, and keeping those lines of communication are really important.
Okay. So I mean, we can probably drop that on the next schedule to maybe talk about what to do. So the Powder House News, Dee, I saw an email that you had sent around, like looking for articles to go in. Do we, and again, maybe it's probably another article next week or whenever we meet again. Do we move that to like bi-monthly? Are you getting enough information or are you having to hound to get articles?
I do have to hound certain people, certain departments. And there are months where there's
Nothing.
not enough. Yes.
So maybe on the agenda to look at rescheduling that to every other month.
I think it's well within staff to say there's just not enough to publish one and just don't.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a select board is necessary on that.
Yeah.
I think if you decide not to post one, let us know. So if someone like complains about it, we're like, people didn't give us enough articles? I have no problem defending that publicly.
We started having that conversation that we may need to go bi-monthly, because you pound the pavement. We talk about it at every department head meeting. Um,
Constantly emailing and saying, you are on the schedule for an article this month, please submit it within the next week, because it's already a week and a half late. So
we'll,
it's
yeah.
more imperative now, because I'm pulling the newsletters together, because I don't have it at one moment, so that we get them earlier, so I have more time to work on.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So we'll talk about it internally and let the board know.
And then the last one, tomorrow I'm attending a meeting to approve the teacher's contract for Berlin Boylston Regional School District. And I don't know if I can tell you what's in it. I don't know if I can tell you the three things that amused me until
Right.
it's signed off tomorrow, so
Yeah, I would
I'll tell
avoid.
you at the next meeting,
Right.
the three
I'd
things that
avoid for
amused
now.
me.
Mhm.
Okay, that's all I got.
Is that then a meeting? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Looking to adjourn.
Seconded?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.